Sophia, will you marry me? Daniel Brooks said it on one knee under a wall of roses in front of 200 people holding a diamond he had lifted out of his own wife's closet 6 hours earlier. The room exploded. Champagne, screaming. 50 phones went up, and 40 feet behind him, still holding the cake she'd baked with her own hands, Emma Carter, watched her dead grandmother's ring slide onto another woman's finger. She didn't scream. She didn't throw anything. She asked one 4-word question that took the whole thing down. Subscribe and stay with me to the end, and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far Emma's story travels tonight. The morning of February 14th started the way every morning had started for the last 2 years in the Brooks household, which is to say, it started with a lie so gentle that it barely felt like one. Daniel came out of the bedroom already knotting his tie, moving fast the way men move when they have decided something in their sleep and do not want to be asked about it. Emma was in the kitchen with her hands wrapped around a coffee cup, still in her robe, watching him the way she had learned to watch him. Not suspiciously, carefully. There was a difference, and she had spent a long time telling herself there was a difference. "You're up early," she said. "Big day," Daniel said. He did not look at her. He was looking at the reflection of his own tie in the microwave door. The Halloran deal is closing this quarter, and Sophia wants the packet finished before the board meeting. Sophia wants. The board wants. Sophia just says it out loud. Emma set her cup down. It made a small sound on the counter, smaller than what she was feeling. "Do you know what today is?" Daniel's hand stopped on the tie for about half a second. Half a second is not a long time. But Emma had been married to this man for 5 years and had been in love with him for 8, and she had gotten very good at reading half seconds. "Of course I know what today is," he said, and turned around and smiled, and it was the old smile, the one from the beginning, the one that used to make her feel like the only person in a crowded room. "Valentine's Day. Em, come on." "I made a reservation," she lied. She had not made a reservation. She had planned to cook. She wanted to see what he would say. "Cancel it." "Daniel." "Cancel it, baby. I'm serious. I'm going to be there until midnight. There's a client thing. The whole company's stuck there." He crossed the kitchen and put his hands on her shoulders and kissed her forehead, and it was such a soft thing, such a small, kind thing, that she felt guilty for the question sitting in her mouth. "This weekend. I promise. I'll take you anywhere you want. Anywhere. Say the word and we'll go." "I don't want anywhere," Emma said. "I want one night." "You'll get 100 nights. I want tonight." Daniel stepped back and did the thing he had started doing that year. The thing she hated most, worse than the missed dinners, worse than the silence. He looked at her with patience, like she was a small problem that would resolve itself if he simply waited long enough without raising his voice. "Emma," he said, "I am building something." "For who? For us." "Then why does it feel like I'm the only one who lives here?" He laughed. He actually laughed, and it was not cruel, and that was somehow worse, because a cruel laugh you can fight. A patient laugh you cannot fight. A patient laugh says you are being adorable and irrational, and it will pass. "I'll try to be home by 10, he said. 10:30. "Okay. Don't wait up if you're tired." "Okay." He grabbed his keys, and then at the door he did something he had not done in 11 months. He came back. He crossed the whole apartment, and he took her face in both his hands, and he kissed her, really kissed her, and he said, "I love you, Em. I know I've been terrible. I know that. It's almost over. After this deal closes, everything changes." And Emma, who was 32 years old and had a graduate degree and a mind that people paid money for, felt her entire body relax like a fist opening. That is the part she would think about later. Not the rooftop, not the roses, the moment he came back across the room to kiss her. Because a man who does not care does not come back across the room. A man who does not care just leaves, which meant he had come back for a reason. The door closed. Emma stood in her kitchen and let herself hope, and hope she would learn is the most expensive thing a person can carry. She called her sister at 10 in the morning. "He's working," Emma said. "On Valentine's Day," Claire said. "There's a deal." "There's always a deal." "Claire, I'm not saying anything. I'm literally not saying anything. You can hear me not saying it, but I'm not saying it." Emma switched the phone to her other ear and opened the refrigerator and looked at the short ribs she had bought on Thursday. I'm going to surprise him. There was a pause on the line long enough for Emma to hear her sister's kitchen faucet running 200 miles away. Surprise him how? Claire said. He said the whole company's stuck there. So I'll bring dinner to the office. I'll bring the cake. We'll eat at his desk like we used to when he was at the old firm. Remember when we ate lo mein out of the carton on the floor because he didn't even have a chair yet? I remember. He was so happy then. Emma, Claire said, and her voice changed. It went low and careful, and Emma felt something cold move through her chest. Can I ask you a question and you don't get mad? Ask. When was the last time he was happy at home? Emma closed the refrigerator door. That's not fair, she said. It's not an unfair question just because you don't like the answer. I have to go. Emma, I have to make a cake. She hung up. And she stood in that kitchen for a long time with her hand still on the refrigerator handle, and the thing about that moment is that some part of her already knew. That is what nobody understands about betrayal. The body knows first. The body knows months before the mind will allow it. Emma had been sleeping badly for a year. She had been losing weight without trying. She had been checking her phone at 2 a.m. for a message that never came. Her body had been screaming at her since the previous spring, and she had been very politely asking it to be quiet. She made the cake anyway. Chocolate raspberry, his favorite, the one his mother used to make before she passed the one Emma had learned by calling his aunt in Pennsylvania and writing it down on an index card in her own handwriting. 3 layers. She melted the chocolate in a bowl over a pot of water because that is how you do it right, and it took 1 hour and 20 minutes, and she burned the first batch of raspberry reduction and started over without complaining, because it mattered to her that it be correct. At 4 o'clock she went to get dressed, and that is when the first crack appeared. The blue dress was in the back of the closet. She had bought it in the 2nd year of their marriage. Daniel had seen her in it once at a benefit dinner and had leaned over in the car afterward and said, "You have no idea what you look like, do you?" And she had thought about that sentence for weeks. She pulled it out, and as she did, her elbow knocked the small carved box on the shelf, the one from her grandmother's house, and it tipped, and Emma caught it, and she opened it to check. The ring was gone. Emma stood in her closet holding an empty box. Her first thought was not what you would expect. Her first thought was not betrayal. Her first thought was fear, pure animal fear, because that ring had been on her grandmother Margaret Whitmore's hand for 51 years. Margaret had worn it through the war years, through the founding of the foundation, through burying a husband and raising 2 children on her own. It was not an expensive object. It was not even the most expensive object in that closet. It was a small, old European cut diamond in a setting that no jeweler had touched since 1962. Its entire value was that Margaret had put it in Emma's hand 9 months before she died and said, "You will know when." Emma tore the closet apart. She emptied the box. She checked the floor. She got on her knees on the carpet in a bathrobe and ran her hands under the shelving, and she found a button and a dry cleaning tag and 11 cents. Then she called Daniel. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. She called again. 4 rings. Voicemail. She texted, "Call me. Now." "It's about Grandma's ring." The 3 dots appeared. She watched them. They pulsed for 11 seconds. They disappeared. They did not come back. And Emma Carter sat down on the floor of her own closet in her own home and felt the first true crack run through her life, and even then she made an excuse for him. She thought he's in a meeting. She thought he's driving. She thought maybe he took it to get it cleaned. As a surprise, for tonight. Because he came back across the room this morning to kiss me, and a man who does not care does not come back across the room. That is what she was thinking when her phone buzzed. It was not Daniel. It was a woman named Rachel Kim. Rachel was the wife of a man named Peter Kim, who worked in accounts at Apex Horizon Technologies, and Emma had met her exactly twice, both times at company functions, both times standing at the edge of a crowd holding a drink she did not want while their husbands did their laps around the room. The text said, "Hey Emma, are you coming tonight?" Emma looked at it for a second and typed back, "Coming where?" The reply took 90 seconds. 90 seconds is a long time when someone is deciding how much of your life to hand you. Rachel wrote, "To the rooftop." At the office. Peter said it's a company Valentine's thing. Emma wrote, "Daniel said it was a client meeting." There was another pause, longer this time. Rachel wrote Emma, "I'm probably out of line, but there's no client. It's a party. Spouses were invited 3 weeks ago. The invitation came from Sophia's assistant." Emma sat very still. She wrote, "3 weeks ago." Rachel wrote, "I'm sorry. I assumed you knew and just didn't want to come. I've been assuming that for a year." Emma set the phone down on the carpet face down, and she breathed, and she noticed a very strange thing about herself in that moment. A thing that would define everything that came after. She was not crying. She was not shaking. Something in her had gone extremely quiet and extremely clear the way the air goes still before weather. She stood up. She put on the blue dress. She did her hair. She did her makeup, and her hands were steady, and she noticed that too, and part of her was frightened by how steady they were. She boxed the cake. She loaded the food into the insulated bag. She carried it all down to the car in 2 trips because she would not leave any of it behind. And then she drove into Manhattan on Valentine's Day evening through traffic that should have made her insane, and she did not turn on the radio, and she did not call her sister, and she did not call Daniel again. She thought about one thing the entire drive. She thought about the empty box. Because here is what Emma understood sitting in that car that the rest of them would not understand for weeks. An affair is a betrayal of a promise. Promises are made of air. You cannot hold a promise in your hand, and you cannot photograph it, and you cannot bring it into a room and set it on a table. But a ring is an object. An object has a history. An object has a chain of custody. An object was in a box, in a closet, in a home, and now it is not, and somebody moved it. And that person had to walk into that closet and open that box and take it out and put it in his pocket and close the door behind him. That is not a feeling. That is an act. And acts leave marks. The Apex Horizon building was 42 floors of glass on the west side, and the lobby at 740 on Valentine's Day was almost empty, except for one security guard behind a granite desk who looked up when she came through the revolving door with a cake box in her arms. "Evening, ma'am. Can I help you?" "I'm going to the rooftop." "Are you on the list?" Emma smiled at him. She had a good smile, an honest one, and it had gotten her through a lot of doors in her life. "My husband works here. Daniel Brooks, strategy team." The guard did something then that Emma would replay for a long time afterward. He looked at her. Really looked at her top to bottom, the dress and the cake and the face, and something moved behind his eyes. Pity. It was pity. It was gone in half a second, but she saw it, and she thought, "Oh, so it isn't a secret. So it's just a secret from me." "Roof's on 42, he said quietly. "Elevator on the left." "Thank you." "Ma'am?" He said it when she was already 3 steps away, and she turned back, and he seemed to argue with himself for a moment. Then he said, "Long night up there, just so you know." Emma held his eyes. "Thank you," she said again. The elevator took 90 seconds to climb 42 floors. She counted them. She stood in a metal box rising through the middle of a building with a chocolate raspberry cake in her arms, and she watched the numbers go up, and somewhere around floor 30, she heard the music start bleeding down through the shaft. Strings. Live strings, not a speaker. Somebody had hired a quartet. Somebody had hired a quartet for a client meeting. The doors opened. The sound hit her first. 200 voices at that specific pitch people reach when the champagne has been going for an hour. And under it, the strings, and under that, the low mechanical hum of the heaters they had rolled out onto the terrace because it was February in New York, and somebody had decided that would not be a problem. And roses. Emma had never in her life seen that many roses in one place. They were on the tables, they were in arches, they were in towers, they were strung along the glass railing that separated the terrace from a 400-foot drop. And later, somebody would tell a reporter that the flower budget alone had come to $11,000, and Emma would read that number and feel absolutely nothing, because by then, she would have learned what things actually cost. She stepped out. Nobody noticed her. That is the thing about a party. 200 people and not one head turned because everyone was facing the same direction, and Emma followed the direction of the room the way you follow the direction of a herd, and she saw the space in the middle where the crowd had opened, and she saw the roses arranged in a wall, and she saw her husband. Daniel Brooks was standing under that wall of roses in a suit she had never seen before. That was the detail that got her. Not the kneeling. The suit. A new suit. Charcoal, tailored, expensive, bought without her knowing, hanging somewhere she had never looked. He had a life she had not been shown, and it had a wardrobe. He was talking. His voice carried because someone had given him a microphone, and Emma stood at the edge of that crowd in her blue dress with a cake in her arms and listened to her husband speak with more emotion than she had heard from him in 2 years. 5 years ago, Daniel said, "I was nobody." The crowd went quiet. They loved this. You could feel them loving it. "I was a kid with a bad haircut and a worse resume, and I walked into a room full of people who had already decided what I was worth. And one person in that room looked at me and saw something else." He stopped. He was doing the thing with his voice, the crack, the little catch. Emma knew that catch. He had used it on her in a parking garage in Boston when he was 26 and had asked her to take a chance on him. "One person believed in me when nobody else did. One person gave me the chance to become someone." Somebody in the crowd said, "Ah." Emma felt her arms go numb around the cake box. "So I've been carrying something around for a while," Daniel said, "and my hands are shaking, so bear with me." He reached into his jacket, and Emma Carter, standing at the back of the crowd, watched her husband pull a small carved box out of his pocket. Her grandmother's box, the one from the shelf, the one she had held in her hands 4 hours ago in a closet on the other side of the river. He had not even bought a new box. He had taken the ring and the box and everything, and he had put it in his jacket that morning before he crossed the room to kiss her, and that was why he had crossed the room. Emma understood it in one clean stroke, the way you understand you have been cut a full second before the pain arrives. He had come back across the room to kiss her because he felt guilty. The kiss was not love. The kiss was a receipt. The crowd parted a little more, and Emma saw who he was facing. Sophia Bennett was 41 years old, and she stood the way people stand when they have never once in their life been asked to wait for something. She was wearing red. She had one hand over her mouth, and her eyes were bright, and Emma thought with a clarity that surprised her she is not surprised. She is performing surprise. She has known about this for weeks. She picked out the dress. Daniel went down on one knee. The room made a sound. 200 people making one sound. He opened the box, and there it was. 51 years on Margaret Whitmore's hand, a small old European cut diamond in a setting nobody had touched since 1962. Emma could see it from 40 feet away because she would have known that ring from 400. "Sophia," Daniel said, "will you marry me?" The terrace exploded. Someone popped a bottle. Someone screamed. The quartet, God bless them, launched into something triumphant. Sophia Bennett put out her left hand and said something Emma could not hear over the noise, and Daniel Brooks slid Margaret Whitmore's ring onto her finger, and the crowd surged in around them, and phones went up. 40, 50 phones, all of them recording, all of them filming, and Emma stood at the back holding a chocolate raspberry cake and did not move. She did not scream. She did not drop the cake. People always ask that. Later, when the story was everywhere, when strangers were arguing about it on the internet, that was the question they kept asking. Why didn't she throw the cake? Why didn't she scream? Why didn't she walk in there and tear that ring off that woman's hand? And the answer is very simple and very sad, because she was thinking about her grandmother. That is all. In the single worst moment of Emma Carter's life, standing on a rooftop, watching her marriage get buried under $11,000 of roses, she was not thinking about Daniel at all. She was thinking about a Tuesday, 9 months before Margaret died, in a room that smelled like lemon oil and old paper, when a 90-year-old woman had taken her granddaughter's hand and pressed a small carved box into it and said, "You will know when." And Emma had said, "When what?" And Margaret had said, "When you need to remember who you are." Emma stood on that rooftop and thought, "All right, Grandma, I need to remember who I am." And that was when a young woman with a tray of champagne walked past her, stopped, backed up 2 steps, and said, "Ma'am, are you all right? You're white as a sheet." Emma turned to her. "I'm fine." "Are you here with someone?" "I'm here with my husband," Emma said. The girl smiled, relieved, glad to have solved it. "Oh, that's great. Which one is he?" Emma looked back at the crowd, at the wall of roses, at the phones. "He's the one on his knees," she said. The girl's face went through 4 expressions in 2 seconds and landed on horror, and her tray tilted, and 2 glasses went over and shattered on the terrace stone, and 200 people turned around. There is a specific silence that happens when a large group of happy people realize simultaneously that they have made a terrible mistake. It does not arrive all at once. It arrives in a wave from the front to the back, or in this case, from the back to the front. The people nearest Emma stopped talking first, then the ones behind them, then the ones behind them. The quartet played 11 more notes into a room that had stopped breathing, and then the cellist looked up, and the music stopped too, and the last sound on that rooftop was a single champagne flute rolling in a slow half-circle across the stone. Emma Carter stood in a blue dress at the back of the crowd holding a cake, and the crowd opened. They did it without being asked. They simply moved the way people move out of the path of something they do not want to be standing in front of, and it made a corridor a straight, clean line from Emma at the back to the wall of roses at the front, and at the end of that corridor, a man in a new charcoal suit was still on one knee with his hand around another woman's fingers. Daniel Brooks turned his head. He saw his wife, and Emma watched his face do something she had never seen it do in 8 years. It did not do grief. It did not do shame. It did not do love or fear or even anger. It did calculation. For 1 full second before anything else reached it, Daniel Brooks's face did arithmetic. She watched him look at her, and look at the phones, and look at Sophia's hand, and she watched him solve for the variable. And she understood that whatever came out of his mouth in the next 3 seconds would not be true, because he had not spent that second deciding what he felt. He had spent it deciding what would work. He stood up. "Emma," he said. His voice was different without the microphone, smaller. She did not answer him. "Emma, baby, what are you doing here?" And that right there was the sentence that ended the marriage. Not the ring, not the kneeling, that. "What are you doing here?" As if she were the intrusion. As if she were the one who had walked into somewhere she did not belong on the 14th of February, holding food she had made with her hands. Sophia Bennett stepped forward and put herself slightly in front of Daniel, which told Emma everything she would ever need to know about the two of them, and about which one of them would go down first when it came apart. "This is a private company event," Sophia said. Emma looked at her. She looked at the red dress and the bright eyes and the hand, and she let her gaze come to rest on the 3rd finger of that hand on a small, old European-cut diamond in a setting nobody had touched since 1962. 200 people watched Emma Carter look at that ring, and Emma said in a voice that was not loud at all, in a voice that carried across that terrace like a dropped plate, "So is my grandmother's jewelry, and yet here we are." Nobody moved. Peter Kim, standing near the bar, would tell his wife 3 hours later that he had never in his life felt a temperature drop like that in a room full of heaters. Sophia's hand curled slightly. It was involuntary. It was the exact motion a person makes when something on their body suddenly belongs to somebody else. "Excuse me," she said. "The ring on your finger," Emma said. "The one he just gave you, in front of everyone, on camera. It belonged to Margaret Whitmore. She wore it for 51 years. She left it to me 9 months before she died, and it has been in a box in my closet in my home since the funeral, and it was in that box this morning at 6:45 when my husband kissed me on the forehead and told me he had a client meeting." She let that sit. "So I'd like to know," Emma said, "which one of you is going to explain how it got onto your hand?" Daniel moved fast. He came around Sophia and put his palms up, and he was already talking, and he was talking too fast, and every person on that rooftop could hear it. Okay, Emma, let's not do this here. Let's go inside and talk." "Answer the question." "You're upset." "Answer the question, Daniel." "It was a gift," Daniel said. Emma tilted her head, and she asked the question that 4 weeks later a federal investigator would call the single most useful sentence anyone in that entire case ever spoke. She asked very quietly, "From whom?" Daniel Brooks opened his mouth, and nothing came out, because there was no answer. That is the thing about a lie that is built to be heard by one person at a time. It works beautifully in a kitchen at 6:45 in the morning. It works in a text message. It works in a car. It does not work on a rooftop with 200 witnesses and 50 phones, because on a rooftop, there is no version of that sentence that survives contact with the room. If he said Emma gave it to him, 40 people knew Emma had just said otherwise. If he said he bought it, he would have to say where. If he said it was his mother's half, the strategy team had met his mother's sister at the Christmas party, and she was standing 11 feet away with a glass of wine and a look on her face like the floor had opened. Daniel Brooks stood in a new charcoal suit under a wall of $11,000 of roses with his mouth open and no sentence in it. And Emma Carter watched her husband of 5 years fail to construct a lie in real time, and she felt the last thing she had left for him go out like a pilot light. Sophia Bennett recovered first. Of course she did. She had not spent 8 years loving anybody in that room. "Get her out of here," Sophia said to nobody in particular, and that was her mistake. Because a woman on a rooftop can be a scene. A woman being removed from a rooftop is a story. And 200 people with 50 phones had just been told out loud by the chief executive of Apex Horizon Technologies that the correct response to an accusation of theft was to remove the accuser from the building. Nobody moved to touch her. Not one person. Emma stood there for another 4 or 5 seconds, and then she did the thing that would end up on the news. The thing that a woman in Ohio would tattoo a piece of onto her forearm 18 months later. The thing that had absolutely nothing to do with revenge. She walked forward. The corridor stayed open. She walked all the way to the front, past the quartet, past the champagne tower, past her husband. And she set the cake box down on the table in the middle of the roses, and she opened it because she wanted them all to see that it was real, that it was 3 layers, that somebody had spent an hour and 20 minutes on a raspberry reduction and burned the first batch and started over. Then she looked at Daniel. "It's your favorite," she said. "It's your mother's recipe. Your aunt gave it to me on the phone in 2019, and I wrote it down by hand because you said nobody made it right anymore." Daniel's face finally broke. It took that. Not the ring, not the witnesses. A cake. "Emma," he said, and his voice came apart in the middle of it. "Enjoy the party," Emma said. And she turned around, and she walked out through 200 silent people, and the only sound on that entire rooftop was the heels of her shoes on the stone, and she got into the elevator, and she watched the doors close on the roses, and the phones, and the wall of faces, and the man on his knees in a suit she had never seen. The elevator started down, and 42 floors is a long way to fall. Emma Carter got about 6 floors before her legs stopped working, and she went down against the wall of that elevator in her blue dress and put her hands over her face, and for exactly the length of one descent, 36 floors, 90 seconds, she let herself be a woman whose husband had just proposed to somebody else. 90 seconds. That was all she gave it. Because the doors opened on the lobby and the security guard was standing there waiting for her with her coat over his arm, and he had tears in his eyes, this enormous man in his 60s, and he said, "Ma'am, I'm so sorry, I should have said something. I've been watching them come and go for a year, and I should have said something." Emma stood up. She took her coat. And she said, "Do the elevators have cameras?" The guard blinked. "Ma'am." "The elevators," Emma said. "This morning, between 6 and 7, does the lobby camera cover the front doors, and does the elevator camera cover the car? And how long does this building keep the footage before it writes over it?" The guard stared at her. 90 days, he said slowly. "And who has to sign for a copy? Building management or a subpoena?" Emma nodded once. She took her phone out of her coat pocket, and standing in the lobby of Apex Horizon Technologies at 8:19 on Valentine's Day with her mascara ruined and her hands finally shaking, Emma Carter scrolled past 32 unread messages from her husband without reading a single one, and she called a woman named Olivia Parker, who had been her grandmother's attorney for 22 years, and who answered on the second ring, even though it was after 8 on a holiday. "Emma, honey, what's wrong?" "Olivia," Emma said, "how fast can you get a preservation letter to a building in Manhattan?" There was a pause. "Tonight," Olivia said. "Why?" Emma looked up. 42 floors of glass above her, and somewhere at the top of it, roses. "Because I want the footage from 6:45 this morning," she said, "and I want the ownership records on my grandmother's estate, and I want you to sit down, because I need to tell you what I just watched my husband do with it." She did not open it in that room. That was the first thing that surprised Olivia Parker. Emma held the envelope in both hands for 11 seconds, and then she set it down on the table unopened and said, "Not yet." "Emma." "Not yet." Her voice was steady. "Olivia, if I open that right now, I'm going to be a granddaughter for the next hour. I can't afford to be a granddaughter for the next hour." Olivia looked at her for a long moment. Then she said quietly, "Margaret would have said the exact same thing." At 6:02 on February 15th, Emma Carter turned to the speakerphone still sitting live on the table and said, "Mr. Kim, are you somewhere safe? I'm in my car." "Where's your car?" Pause. "The Whole Foods parking lot in Chelsea." "Peter?" Emma leaned toward the phone. "Listen to me. Have you told anyone at Apex what you just told me?" "No." "Have you emailed anything to yourself?" Long pause. "Peter?" "In November," he said. "I sent 3 spreadsheets to my personal Gmail. I was scared. I wanted a copy." Olivia put her face in her hands. "That was on their server," she said. "Son, that was on their server. They know. They have known since November. They have a log of every file you touched." "I didn't take anything. I just wanted a—" "I believe you," Olivia said. "That's not the problem. The problem is that in about 90 minutes, somebody in that building is going to realize that the man whose wife texted Emma Carter yesterday is also the man who exfiltrated 3 files in November, and honey, when they put those 2 things together, they are going to come for you first." Silence on the line. Then Peter Kim said in a voice that had gone completely young, "I have a daughter. She's 4. At 6:09, Olivia Parker did something she had not done in 19 years. She stood up in the middle of a conversation, walked to her desk, opened the bottom drawer, and took out a card with a phone number on it that was not printed anywhere. "Mr. Kim," she said, "do not go home. Drive to the address I'm about to text you. There will be a woman named Denise waiting for you in the lobby. She is a former federal prosecutor, and she is going to represent you for free, and the first thing she is going to tell you is to stop talking to me." "Why would she—" "Because you are not a whistleblower yet," Olivia said. "Right now you're a guy who took files. Denise is going to make you a whistleblower by 9 o'clock tonight, and once you are one, they cannot touch you, and if they try, that's a second felony on top of the first one." At 6:14, Peter Kim's car pulled out of a Whole Foods parking lot in Chelsea. At 6:16, in an office on the 39th floor of the Apex Horizon Tower, a man in IT named Gerald ran a routine access audit that Richard Vance had ordered at 2 that afternoon, and a name came up highlighted in yellow. Kim Peter, 3 outbound transfers, November 11th. At 6:18, Gerald picked up the phone. He did not call Richard Vance. He called Sophia Bennett's assistant. At 6:40 on February 15th, Emma Carter walked out of Olivia Parker's building into a wall of cameras. She had not expected it. That is the thing nobody tells you. She had spent 24 hours thinking about signatures and footage and vetoes, and she had completely forgotten that 4 million people had watched her face on a rooftop and that the internet had given her a name. Emma, Emma over here. Cake Lady Emma. Emma, did you know about the affair? Emma, are you filing for divorce? She stopped on the sidewalk. And this is the part that made it worse and made it better and made everything that came after possible. She stopped and she turned, and 40 lenses swung to her, and she stood there in a borrowed coat with a dead woman's envelope in her handbag, and she understood in one clean second that she had a choice. She could be a victim. There was an entire lane open for it. There was a warm, comfortable, endlessly rewarding lane, and it was paved, and every single person on that sidewalk was begging her to take it, or she could say nothing. Emma looked directly into the nearest camera, and she said, "I'm not going to talk about my marriage." "Emma, what about the ring?" She was already walking. "Emma, is it true the ring belonged to Margaret Whitmore?" She stopped again, and every reporter on that sidewalk saw it, and 3 of them would later say it was the single most chilling moment of their careers, because Emma Carter turned around very slowly and said 6 words in a voice that did not rise at all. She said, "Who told you the name Whitmore?" Nobody answered. "I haven't said that name," Emma said. "I haven't said one word to any of you. Not one. So somebody put that name in the air in the last 24 hours, and I'd very much like to know who." She got in the cab. And at 6:43, sitting in traffic on 6th Avenue, Emma Carter figured out the answer, and it was so ugly that she laughed out loud, and the driver looked at her in the mirror, because there was only one reason to leak that name. If Emma Carter was just a wife, the story was a sad little scandal about a man who cheated. But if Emma Carter was a Whitmore heiress, then the story became a rich woman humiliating a self-made CEO, and the ring became a family dispute over an estate, and Emma became a woman with money and lawyers and a foundation, and the internet, which had loved her for 11 hours, would turn on her in 9. They were not hiding her identity. They were deploying it. At 7:15, Emma's phone buzzed with a text from a number she did not have saved. It said, "Emma, it's Sophia Bennett. I think you and I need to talk without the men in the room." Emma stared at it. She sent it to Olivia. Olivia called her in 40 seconds. "Absolutely not. Olivia. No. Emma, no. Do you understand what she is? She is a person who has run a company for 11 years and closed 9-figure deals in rooms full of people who were smarter than her, and she is very, very good at exactly one thing, and that thing is getting people to say sentences she can use." "She's scared," Emma said. "She's cornered. Those are not the same, and the second one is worse. Olivia, she reached out to me 19 hours after I ruined her life on a rooftop. Why? Because she wants something." "Yes," Emma said, "and I want to know what it is." There was a very long pause on the line. "Emma Carter," Olivia said slowly, "you are going to be an absolute nightmare, aren't you?" "I learned from Margaret." "You didn't learn from Margaret, you inherited it, and God help everyone." Olivia exhaled. "Fine, but I'm setting the terms, and you follow them exactly. Public place, daytime. Your phone records the whole thing, and New York is one-party consent, so it's legal, and she won't know. You don't ask questions, you let her talk. And Emma, yes, you do not say one single word about the signature, not one. That's the only card we have that she doesn't know we're holding." At 8 in the morning on February 16th, Emma Carter sat down across from Sophia Bennett in a diner on 9th Avenue. Sophia had not slept. It was the first thing Emma noticed, and it gave her a strange, unwanted feeling, because a woman without sleep is not a villain, she is just a woman. Sophia sat down and said, "Thank you for coming." Emma said nothing. "I'm going to say something you won't believe," Sophia said. "I didn't know." Emma waited. "I didn't know about the ring. He told me it was his grandmother's. He told me a whole story. Emma, there was a house in Scranton. There was a woman who raised him after his mother got sick. There was a detail about her hands." Sophia's jaw moved. "There was a detail about her hands. Do you understand what I'm telling you? He invented a woman's hands, so I would wear that ring." Emma still said nothing. Sophia looked at her. "You're not going to help me at all, are you?" "No," Emma said. Sophia laughed. It was short and ugly and real. "Fair," she said. She turned her coffee cup a half circle on the table. "I've been running that company for 11 years, she said. "Do you know what I was doing at your age? I was sleeping in a storage unit in Newark. Not a metaphor. An actual storage unit with a cot because I had put every dollar I had into a company nobody believed in, and I couldn't pay rent and payroll in the same month, so I picked payroll." She looked up. "I have never once in my life had a person hand me something. Not once." "Is that supposed to make me sympathize?" "No," Sophia said. "It's supposed to explain why I was stupid." Emma's chest tightened and she hated it. "He was the first person," Sophia said, "in 11 years who acted like he wanted to give me something instead of take something." And there it was. Emma sat very still because she had just heard the con from the other side, and it was the same con. Word for word, the same shape. Daniel Brooks had found a woman who had never been given anything, and he had given. He had done it to Emma at a bar 8 years ago. "He asked you questions," Emma said. Sophia's head came up. "He asked you a lot of questions," Emma said, "and he remembered the answers. Weeks later, months later, he'd bring back a detail you'd mentioned once, and you'd think, God, he was actually listening. Nobody listens." Sophia did not move. "He told you that you were different from other people he'd met," Emma said. "He told you that people underestimated you and he could see it. He made you feel like the only real person in a room full of performances. Stop. He did it to me in April 8 years ago, Emma said. It took him 5 weeks. Sophia Bennett put her hand over her mouth, and Emma watched a woman who had built an empire realize she had been run. At 8:19, Sophia said, "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want you to answer one question honestly," Emma said, "and you can't do it while you still think it was love." "Ask." Emma leaned in. "When did you learn my last name?" And Sophia Bennett hesitated. It was a quarter of a second. It was less than that. But Emma had spent 8 years reading half seconds off a face across a kitchen, and it might as well have been an hour. "At the party," Sophia said. And Emma sat back, and she felt the last piece of pity in her body die. "Okay," she said. "Emma? No, that's fine." Emma reached for her bag. "That's great. Thank you for the coffee." "Emma, wait. What did I just do?" Emma stood up. "You lied to me," she said, "and you didn't even need to, and that means somebody told you to." At 8:22 in the morning, Emma Carter walked out of a diner on 9th Avenue with 2 hours of audio on her phone and a piece of information Sophia Bennett did not know she had given away. Because a woman protects a lie for one of 2 reasons. Either it's hers or it belongs to someone she's afraid of, and Sophia Bennett was not afraid of Daniel Brooks. At 9:40 on February 16th, Richard Vance sent the memo. He sent it because at 9:35, Gerald from IT had come to his office and said, "Sir, I flagged something yesterday, and I want to tell you I reported it to the wrong person." And Vance had listened for 4 minutes and then very calmly asked Gerald to leave and close the door. Then Richard Vance sat alone for 90 seconds. Then he added a 5th sentence to the memo. The 5th sentence read, "I further believe the CEO's office has been notified of and has taken independent action regarding an employee access flag involving a potential accounting irregularity, and I am recusing myself from any further internal handling of this matter." He sent it to all 7 independent directors at 9:40. At 9:51, a man named Arthur Wells, who had sat on the Apex Horizon board for 9 years and who owned a chunk of it, read that memo on a plane over Ohio. At 9:52, Arthur Wells stood up in first class and asked a flight attendant to connect him to the ground. At 11 in the morning, Emma Carter's phone rang. It was Detective Ruth Alvarez. "Ma'am, where are you?" "Olivia's office." "Stay there." Emma's stomach dropped. "What happened?" "Your husband walked into the 19th precinct 40 minutes ago with a lawyer and made a statement." Emma closed her eyes. "What did he say?" "Ma'am, I'm not supposed to bore a detective." Long pause. "He said you gave him the ring on January 11th, Alvarez said. "He said you gave it to him because you knew the marriage was over and you wanted him to be happy. He said you told him to use it for whoever came next. He said you were crying when you said it and that he begged you not to." Emma opened her eyes. "He said what?" "He said that afterward you had, and I'm reading this exactly, a break," Alvarez said. "He said you've been unwell since your grandmother died. He said your sister is worried about you. He said you installed cameras in the apartment because you thought people were coming in. He said, quote, 'She's been watching me on that thing for a year. Ask her, she'll tell you she watches me.'" Emma stood very still in the middle of Olivia Parker's office. Olivia was watching her face. "Emma," Alvarez said, and her voice changed. "You need to hear the rest of it." "Say it." "He submitted a photograph." "Of what?" "Of you," Alvarez said, holding the box, smiling. "He says it's from January 11th. He says it's the moment you gave it to him." The room tilted. "January 11th, Emma said. "Yes, ma'am." Emma turned around slowly. Olivia had already reached for the legal pad. "Detective," Emma said, "does the photograph have a timestamp?" He submitted a printed copy. "A printed copy?" "Yes, ma'am." Emma started to laugh. She could not stop. She laughed until she had to sit down on the arm of Olivia's couch, and Olivia was saying her name, and Alvarez was saying her name through the phone, and Emma finally got the words out. "That's Christmas," she said. "Ma'am." "That photo is from Christmas," Emma said. "December 24th. I took the box down at Christmas to show my sister. My sister took that picture. My sister took it on her phone and she sent it to me, and it is in a group chat with our mother, and it has a date on it, and there are 11 other photos from that same 40-second span." Silence on the line. Then Ruth Alvarez said, "Mrs. Carter, does your sister still have the original file?" "She has everything," Emma said. "She's never deleted a photo in her life. My mother makes fun of her for it." "Ma'am," Alvarez's voice had gone very careful, "I want you to understand what your husband just did. He didn't lie to you. He didn't lie to a reporter. He submitted a falsified evidentiary exhibit to a police department in a sworn statement, and if that photograph is dated December 24th, that is not a divorce anymore. That's tampering." Emma looked at Olivia. Olivia had gone perfectly still, the way a person goes still when they are watching something they have waited their whole career to see. "Detective," Olivia said, "was his attorney in the room?" "Yes." "Did his attorney let him submit the photo?" Pause. "His attorney asked for a recess," Alvarez said. "And when they came back, the photo was still on the table." Olivia Parker sat down. "Yeah. He's not listening to counsel," she said softly. Emma, do you understand? He's panicking so hard, he's not listening to his own lawyer." At 11:20 on February 16th, Claire Carter, in a kitchen 200 miles away, opened a photo from December 24th and sent it to a detective in Manhattan with the metadata intact. At 11:22, she called her sister. "Emma? Claire, thank you, thank you." "Emma, shut up." Claire was not crying. Claire had not cried since the night before last and would not cry again for a month. "There's something else. He called me." Emma froze. "When? Last night? 10:30? Claire's voice was flat. "He called me and he cried, Em, for 11 minutes. He cried about how worried he's been about you and how he doesn't know what to do and how you've changed since Grandma died. And would I please just talk to you? And would I please just tell him if you'd said anything about wanting to hurt yourself?" Emma made a sound she had never made before. "He was building it," Claire said. "He was calling your family to build it. He wanted to be able to say her own sister was worried. And Emma, I want to tell you the truth, and I want to tell you now, because if I don't tell you now, I'll never say it." "Claire." For about 4 minutes, Claire said, "I believed him." Silence. 4 minutes, Claire said. "He is that good. 4 minutes I sat in my kitchen thinking, maybe she has been off lately. Maybe I should have called more. Maybe this is my fault." And then he made one mistake. "What mistake?" He said, "She's not sleeping. She's been up at 2 in the morning. For months, she told me." Claire's voice cracked once and then went hard again. "Emma, you never told him that. You told me that, in October, on the phone." Emma's whole body went cold. "So how did he know?" Claire said. At 11:31 in the morning, Emma Carter looked up at Olivia Parker and said, "He's been reading my phone." At noon, Detective Ruth Alvarez called back with 2 sentences. "The photograph is December 24th, and Mrs. Carter, your husband's attorney, withdrew from representation 18 minutes ago." At 12:20, Emma sat down and finally opened the envelope. Olivia offered to leave the room. Emma said no. She said, "You knew her longer than I did in some ways. Stay." The paper was heavy. Margaret Whitmore had written it by hand, and it had taken her. Olivia said later 4 days, because her hands had been bad by then, and she would not let anyone type it. It said, "Emma, if you are reading this, then I was right, and I am so sorry because I have never once in my life wanted to be right less. I did not like Daniel. You knew that. You thought it was because he was ambitious and had no money. Emma, I was born with no money. I did not care that he was ambitious. Half the good in this world is built by ambitious men. I did not like Daniel because of the second time we met. The first time at the benefit, he asked me 11 questions about myself and did not tell me one thing about himself. I thought this is a charming young man who is very well brought up. The second time was in October at the house. You were in the kitchen with your mother. Daniel and I sat in the front room for 9 minutes alone, and in 9 minutes he asked me 3 questions. He asked how the family seats on the board worked. He asked whether they could be voted by proxy. And then he asked, and I remember this exactly because I have thought about it every week since he asked, does Emma understand what she has, not does Emma know? Does Emma understand what she has? Emma, a man in love, asks about the woman. A man in business asks about the instrument. I said, no, she doesn't, and that is on purpose. And he smiled at me, and he said, that's probably safest. Emma, in 89 years, I have sat across from 400 men who wanted something from me, and I have never in my life been frightened of one of them until that afternoon in the front room, because he agreed with me. He agreed with me instantly, and he agreed with me warmly, and I understood that he had just been told where the door was and had thanked me for it. I went to my lawyer the next week, and I changed the consent provision to unanimous, and 3 men told me I was senile, and I did it anyway, and I did it for one reason. I did it so that nobody could ever take it from you quietly. Emma, I could not stop you from marrying him. I tried in my way, and I was old, and you were in love, and if I had said it plainly, you would have married him faster and hated me for it, and I would have died with my granddaughter not speaking to me. So I did the only thing an old woman can do. I made the lock so loud that when someone finally picked it, you would hear it. I am sorry it took this long. I am sorry you had to find out the way you are finding out. Emma, the ring is not important. Let them have the ring. It is a stone. I wore it for 51 years and it never once made me brave. What I gave you in that box was not the ring. What I gave you was the fact that I saw it coming, and I still trusted you to survive it. Do not spend 1 hour of your life proving you were not stupid. You were not stupid. You were loved badly by a man who studied you. There is no version of you that catches that in April of that year. There is no smarter Emma who avoids this. Stop looking for her. Now. Go find out what he was covering. Because Emma, a man does not spend 6 years marrying a door. He spends 6 years marrying a door because there is something on the other side he cannot afford to have found. I love you more than I ever managed to say out loud, which was my one great failure. Grandma. At 12:41, Emma Carter set the letter down on the table. Olivia Parker was openly weeping. Emma was not. She said in a voice like a struck bell, "Olivia, she wrote 6 years." Olivia wiped her face. "What? Read it again." Emma slid it across. "A man does not spend 6 years marrying a door. She wrote that in 2019. We'd been married 2 years in 2019. We'd known each other 5. Olivia looked at the page. "So why?" Emma said, "Did my grandmother count 6? Olivia Parker went absolutely white. "Because he didn't meet you at that benefit," she whispered. "No," Emma said. "He met me at that benefit. But somebody put him in that room." At 1 o'clock on February 16th, Emma Carter asked a question that would take a federal task force 11 weeks to answer. She said, "Olivia, who gave Daniel Brooks a ticket to my grandmother's benefit in April 8 years ago?" At 1:40, Olivia called the Foundation's development office and asked for the donor list from that year's spring benefit, and the woman on the phone laughed and said, "Oh, honey, that's 8 years ago. That's in the basement in Yonkers." Then go to Yonkers. At 3:15, a development associate named Tomas Reyes sent Olivia Parker a photograph of a page from a ledger, table 19. 10 seats. Purchased at $4,000 a seat, $40,000 total paid by wire from an LLC registered in Delaware. And on the seating list for table 19 in a development associate's handwriting from 8 years ago was the name Daniel Brooks, and 4 lines above it was another name, Sophia Bennett. At 3:17, Emma Carter stopped breathing. "She was there," she said. "She was at the table," Olivia said. "Emma, she was at the same table. She told me she learned my name at the party. She sat at a table with me 8 years ago." "Emma, look at the ledger." Emma looked. And she saw it, and it was so much worse. The name at the top of table 19, the person who had paid for it, the host of record, was not Sophia Bennett, and it was not Daniel Brooks. It was a name Emma had never heard in her life, Vincent Hale. At 3:20, Olivia Parker typed that name into a search bar, and what came back made her physically push her chair away from the desk. "Olivia, what?" "Emma." Olivia's voice had gone strange. "Vincent Hale is the managing partner of the private equity firm that owns 41% of Halloran." The room went silent. "Halloran," Emma said. "The merger. The merger. The merger my signature was forged for." "Yes. Was funded by a man who bought my table 8 years ago." "Emma," Olivia said, and she was reaching for her phone with a hand that was not steady. Vincent Hale did not fund the merger. Vincent Hale is the reason there's a merger. He's the buyer. He's been the buyer the whole time. Emma sat down. 8 years, she said. 8 years. They've been running this for 8 years. Emma, listen to me. Olivia had the phone to her ear. Sophia Bennett didn't recruit Daniel. Sophia Bennett was handed Daniel. And that means she's not the top of this. She never was. She's been carrying a $190 million hole for 6 years, and somebody has been letting her carry it. And honey, do you understand what that means? Do you understand why she lied to you in that diner? Emma looked up. She's not protecting Daniel, Emma said slowly. She's terrified of Vincent Hale. At 3:31 on February 16th, Sophia Bennett's assistant walked into her office and said, "Vincent's downstairs." Sophia did not look up from her desk. She said, "Tell him I'm in a meeting." The assistant said, "Ma'am, he's in the elevator." At 3:34, the door opened and a 60-year-old man in a gray coat walked into the office of the CEO of Apex Horizon Technologies without knocking, sat down across from her, and did not say hello. He said, "March 22nd. Vincent." "March 22nd. Vincent Hale said again pleasantly. "That's 34 days. In 34 days, the merger closes and everything you did for 6 years goes into a filing cabinet nobody opens. On March 23rd, the auditors get the quarterlies." "There's a situation. There's a video," Vincent said. 4 million views. Of your employee putting a Whitmore heirloom on your finger. Sophia's hands were flat on the desk. "I didn't know what it was." "I know you didn't," Vincent said. "That's not the problem. Then what's the problem?" Vincent Hale smiled at her, and it was warm, and it was the exact same warmth, and if Emma Carter had been in that room, she would have recognized it instantly. "The problem," he said, "is that she does now." At 3:40, he stood up. "Sophia, I'm going to say one thing, and then I'm going to leave, and you're going to think about it tonight instead of sleeping." He buttoned his coat. 11 years ago, you were in a storage unit in Newark. You had a cot. You had a space heater that didn't work. And a man you'd never met wired you $600,000 because he believed in you when nobody else did. Sophia's face did not move. "Do you remember what you said to me?" Vincent asked. She said nothing. "You said, 'Why me?'" Vincent Hale walked to the door. "And I said, 'Because you'll never ask me for anything again.'" He opened it. "You've asked me for 11 things since," he said. "Don't make it 12. At 3:46, the door closed. And Sophia Bennett sat alone in an office on the 40th floor and understood 6 years too late that she had been recruited the exact same way she recruited Daniel and the exact same way Daniel recruited Emma, and that it was not a coincidence, and that it had never been a coincidence because it was not a personality. It was a method. At 4 o'clock, Emma's phone rang. Unknown number. She looked at Olivia. Olivia said, "Record it." Emma answered. "Emma Carter." A man's voice, older, warm, extraordinarily pleasant. "My name is Vincent Hale. I don't believe we've met, though I think we may have been in the same room once a long time ago." Emma's blood stopped. "I want to start," Vincent said, "by telling you that I'm very sorry about what happened to you. I mean that. I've read about it, and I think it's disgraceful, and I want you to know that whatever else you hear about me in the next few weeks, that part is sincere." Olivia was writing on the pad fast, and she turned it around. It said, "Hang up." Emma looked at it. "Mr. Hale," she said, "how did you get this number?" "Emma," Vincent said, and his voice was so kind. "I've had this number for 8 years. Olivia's pen stopped. "I'd like to buy you lunch," Vincent Hale said. "I think you'll find I'm the only person in this entire story who's ever going to tell you the truth." "Why would you do that?" "Because," he said, "I'm the only one who doesn't need anything from you." And Emma Carter, standing in an office in Midtown Manhattan with her grandmother's letter open on the table beside her, heard the lie so clearly it was almost a comfort, because she had heard that sentence before. 8 years ago, at a bar, from a 26-year-old who had made her laugh. "Mr. Hale," Emma said, "one question. Anything." "Table 19, she said. "Spring benefit. 8 years ago. You bought 10 seats for $40,000 and you didn't come." Silence. For the first time, silence. "You didn't come to your own table," Emma said. "You bought 10 seats at my grandmother's benefit, and you gave one of them to a 26-year-old nobody named Daniel Brooks, and then you stayed home." The line was completely quiet. And then Vincent Hale said in a voice with all the warmth drained out of it, in a voice Emma would hear in her sleep for a year, "Margaret said you didn't understand what you had." Emma's hand tightened on the phone. "She was wrong," Vincent Hale said. "Wasn't she?" And he hung up. For 11 seconds, nobody in that office said anything. Then Olivia Parker put down her pen and said, "Emma, give me the phone." "Why?" "Because I want to hold it," Olivia said, "and I want you to sit down because your hands are shaking and you don't know it yet." Emma looked down. They were. At 4:03 on February 16th, she sat. "He said my grandmother's name," Emma said. "I heard." "He said it like he'd said it before. Olivia, he didn't say Mrs. Whitmore. He didn't say your grandmother. He said Margaret." "I heard that too." "How many people in this world called her Margaret?" Olivia Parker took her glasses off very slowly. 11, she said, "and I could name all of them by 5 o'clock, and honey, Vincent Hale is not one of them." At 4:15, Olivia called Detective Ruth Alvarez. At 4:18, Alvarez said, "Ma'am, I'm going to be honest with you. This is past me." Meaning I do burglary and I do fraud under a certain number, and this is not that. Alvarez's voice was careful. "I made a call yesterday. There's a woman in the Southern District who's been sitting on Apex for 2 months on something completely unrelated. Wire stuff. Nothing to do with your husband." Emma leaned toward the phone. 2 months. 2 months, Alvarez said. "Mrs. Carter, you didn't start this. You walked into the middle of it holding a cake." At 5:30 on February 16th, a woman named Assistant United States Attorney Dana Moreau sat down in a conference room in Olivia Parker's office and did not shake anyone's hand. She said, "Before we start, Mrs. Carter, I want you to understand something, and I want you to understand it now, because if you understand it later, you're going to feel betrayed, and I don't have time for that. Okay? I am not here for your marriage," Moreau said. "I am not here for your ring. I don't care about the ring. If your grandmother's ring is at the bottom of the Hudson at the end of this, that is a bad day for you and a Tuesday for me." Olivia said, "Dana." "No, she needs to hear it." Moreau looked at Emma. "I'm here because on November 11th, a man named Peter Kim moved 3 files, and one of those files has a counterparty on it that I have been looking at since December for reasons that have nothing to do with you. And then last night, my office got a call from a former prosecutor named Denise Alvarado saying she has a client who wants to talk." Emma's throat closed. "Peter." "Your friend, Peters Moreau said, did the single smartest thing anybody in this story has done, and he did it because your lawyer put him in a car." At 5:36, Moreau opened a folder. "Here's where we are. Sophia Bennett is not my target. Daniel Brooks is definitely not my target. Do you understand what I'm telling you?" Emma understood. "Vincent Hale," she said. "I didn't say that." "You didn't have to." Dana Moreau looked at her for a long moment, and something in her face shifted the tiniest amount, the way ice shifts. "Mrs. Carter, do you know why I drove here on a Friday night instead of sending an investigator?" "No." "Because at 4:15 this afternoon you asked a man a question about a table at a benefit," Moreau said, "and he answered it. He actually answered it. Do you have any idea how long I've been trying to get Vincent Hale to say a complete sentence into anything?" The room went very still. "You recorded that call," Moreau said. "Right." Olivia slid the phone across the table. At 5:41, Dana Moreau listened to 22 seconds of audio, and then she sat back in her chair and said one word. She said, "Margaret." "He said it like he knew her," Emma said. "He said it," Moreau said slowly, "like he was angry at her." And Emma Carter felt something move in her chest, something with no name yet, because that was true. That was exactly true. She had heard it and not understood it. Vincent Hale had not said her grandmother's name with familiarity. He had said it with a grudge. At 6:05, Moreau made a phone call in the hallway that lasted 9 minutes. She came back in and said, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to think before you answer. Did your grandmother ever turn anyone down?" Emma blinked. "What? The foundation. Did she ever kill a deal?" "I don't know." "Olivia, Olivia Parker had gone very quiet. "Once," she said. Both women turned. "Olivia?" Emma said. 2006, Olivia said. "There was a fund that wanted the foundation as an anchor partner on an infrastructure thing. Very big, very clean on paper. Margaret killed it in a 9-minute meeting and would not say why, and I asked her 4 times over the next 10 years and she never told me." Dana Moreau leaned forward. "What was the fund called?" Olivia looked at her hands. "Hale Riverstone," she said, and Emma Carter's grandmother reached out of a grave and put a hand on the table. At 6:11 on February 16th, Dana Moreau said out loud to nobody, 20 years. "What? He's been at this 20 years, Moreau said. "Mrs. Carter, your grandmother didn't just say no to him. She said no to him at the beginning, before he was Vincent Hale. When he was a 38-year-old, nobody with one fund and a bad year and one old woman in a 9-minute meeting decided he wasn't worth the risk, and every single person in that industry heard about it inside a week. And what happened to him? He spent 4 years crawling," Moreau said, "and then he learned." "Learned what?" Dana Moreau looked at her. "That you don't ask an institution for permission," she said. "You marry it." At 6:30, Emma Carter stood up and walked to the window and put her forehead against the cold glass. "So I'm not a person," she said. "Emma." "No, I'd like to say it out loud once, just once, and then I'll never say it again." She did not turn around. "I'm not a person, I'm a door. My grandmother said it and I thought it was a metaphor. It isn't. I'm the last unlocked door in a building somebody's been trying to get into for 20 years, and everything that has ever happened to me since I was 24 happened because I'm the door." The room was silent. Then Dana Moreau said, and her voice was completely different, "Mrs. Carter." "Emma. Emma." Moreau closed the folder. "Can I tell you something off the record, genuinely off? Olivia can throw me out." Emma turned around. "I've done this for 16 years, Moreau said. "I have watched 100 people find out that their whole life was somebody's business plan. And you know what? Almost all of them do." "What?" "They ask if any of it was real," Moreau said. "Every single one. It's always the first question. Was the honeymoon real? Was the Christmas real? Did he love me at all, even once, even for a minute? And I always tell them the same thing, which is that I don't know and it doesn't matter, and they cry, and I lose them. And what am I doing?" "You asked about a table," Moreau said. 24 hours in, you asked about a seating chart from 8 years ago." She stood up and picked up her coat. "Emma, I've been trying to build a case against Vincent Hale for 2 months, and I have nothing. You've been at this 2 days, and you asked him a question that made him hang up a phone." At 6:40, Dana Moreau stopped in the doorway. "March 22nd, she said. "Do you know what that is?" "It's when the merger closes." "It's when I lose," Moreau said. "If that deal closes, $190 million stops being a whole and starts being a rounding error in a combined balance sheet, and there's no crime anymore. There's just a company that had a rough patch. Every witness I have goes quiet because they're all employed by the new entity. Every document I want is buried in an integration. Emma, I don't need to win by March 22nd. "Then what do you need?" Dana Moreau smiled for the first time in 90 minutes. "I need that deal not to close," she said. And Emma Carter looked at her, and Olivia Parker, sitting at the table with 45 years of law in her hands, said very quietly, "Oh." "Yeah," Moreau said. "Oh, Dana." "Yeah." Emma said, "What?" Olivia turned to her. "Emma," she said, "you're the unanimous consent." At 6:43 on February 16th, Emma Carter understood that she was not a witness in this case. She was the case. "They forged your signature," Olivia said, "because they had to have it, which means they still have to have it because a forged signature only works until somebody notices, and honey, we noticed on Thursday." "So they know. They know. Which means they need something else." "Yes." "What's the something else?" Emma said. And nobody answered. At 7:15, Emma went back to the hotel, and she was so tired she could not feel her hands, and she got out of the elevator on the 9th floor, and there was a man standing in front of her door. Daniel. Emma stopped dead in the hallway. He looked terrible. That was the first thing, and it hit her much harder than she expected, because she had been married to this man for 5 years, and her body did not know yet that it was supposed to be afraid. He had not shaved. He was in the same charcoal suit, and it had a stain on the lapel, and his eyes were red and enormous. "Emma, how did you find me?" "Please, 2 minutes." "How did you find me, Daniel?" He said nothing. And Emma looked at him and felt the last of the fog go out of her head. "You're in my phone," she said. "Emma, you're in my phone right now. You know where I am. You know what I ordered for dinner. You know I called my sister at 11. Her voice did not rise. It went down. "That's how you knew about the 2 in the morning thing. You've been reading me for a year." 2 minutes, Daniel said. "That's all. 2 minutes and I'll go." And here is the thing that Emma would never tell anyone, not Olivia, not Claire, not the reporters, not the woman in Ohio with the tattoo. She almost said yes, not because she loved him. That was gone. It had gone out like a pilot light on a rooftop, and it had not come back. She almost said yes because she was so tired, and because he was the only person left alive who remembered the version of her life where none of this had happened, and grief is a stupid animal that will run toward anything familiar. She stood in that hallway for 4 seconds. Then she said, "No." Daniel's face broke. "Emma, they're going to indict me." "Yes." 20 years, do you understand? They said 20 years. Who said? Everyone. My lawyer quit. My new lawyer says... He stopped and he did something horrible. He laughed. "My new lawyer says the photograph was the stupidest thing anyone's ever done." "It was," Emma said. "I know." "You submitted a picture my sister took of me on Christmas Eve," Emma said, "and you told a police officer it was proof I'd given you my grandmother's ring." "I know." "Why?" "Because you weren't going to forgive me," Daniel said, and Emma laughed. She could not help it. It came out of her like something breaking. "That's your reason. That's it. You committed a felony because you did the math and decided I wouldn't forgive you. You wouldn't have." "No, Daniel," Emma said. "I wouldn't have, but I would have let you go." He stared at her. "I would have let you go," she said. "Do you understand that? On the 14th, if you'd come home, if you'd said, 'Emma, I've been in love with someone else for 2 years and I'm a coward, and I'm sorry,' I would have cried for 6 months and I would have let you go. I loved you enough to let you go. That's what you never understood. You thought you had to steal something from me. You never had to steal anything from me. All you ever had to do was ask, and I'd have given you my whole life." Daniel Brooks put his hand flat on the wall, and he said, "That's what he said you'd say." Emma stopped breathing. "What?" Daniel's eyes came up, and there was something in them she had never seen, not in 8 years. Terror. "Emma," he said, "I need to tell you something, and then I need you to never tell anyone I told you." At 7:22 on February 16th, Emma Carter said the smartest thing she said in the entire case. She said, "Daniel, don't." He blinked. "Don't tell me," she said. "Tell them." "You don't understand. I understand perfectly." She had her phone in her hand, and she was not hiding it. "You're about to give me something, so I'll owe you. That's how you do it. That's how you did it at the bar 8 years ago. You gave me a story about your mother in the first 20 minutes, and I felt like I'd been trusted with something. Daniel, I have read the manual now. I've read the whole manual." He went gray. "So no?" Emma said. "You don't get to give me a secret. You get to give it to a federal prosecutor named Dana Moreau in a room with a lawyer on the record. And if it's real, it'll save your life. And if it's a play, it'll cost you 10 more years. Those are the only 2 options in the entire world." Daniel Brooks stood in a hotel hallway with his hand on the wall. "He'll kill me," he said. "No, he won't," Emma said. "He'll do worse. He'll let you take it." And she watched her husband understand that. At 7:31, Daniel said, "Emma, I'm sorry." "I know." "Do you believe me?" "Yes," Emma said. "That's the worst part, Daniel. I do believe you. I think you're sorry. I think you've probably been sorry for 4 years. She stepped past him and put her key card against the door. "Sorry isn't a character. Sorry is a feeling. You had the feeling every single day, and it never once changed what you did at 9 in the morning." The lock clicked green. "Emma?" he said. She turned around. "Was any of it real?" Daniel Brooks asked. And Emma Carter looked at him, and she thought about Dana Moreau in a conference room, saying every single one of them asks, that it's always the first question, and she felt something in her go very calm and very old. Yeah, she said. It was real for me. That's what you took. She closed the door. At 7:34, she slid down the back of it and sat on the carpet, and she did not cry. And at 7:41, she picked up her phone and called Dana Moreau and said, "He's in the hallway. He wants to talk. He's going to change his mind in about an hour, so I'd hurry." At 8:15 on February 16th, Daniel Brooks got into a car with 2 federal agents in front of a hotel on 44th Street. At 8:19, someone photographed it. At 8:40, it was everywhere. At 9:02 on February 17th, Sophia Bennett's phone rang at her kitchen counter, and she looked at the screen and it said Vincent, and she let it ring. It rang 11 times. At 9:04, it rang again. At 9:06, Sophia Bennett called a number she had written on the back of a receipt at 4 in the morning, and a woman answered and said Alvarado. "Is this the lawyer? Who's asking?" Sophia Bennett stood in her kitchen in a $2 million apartment and said the hardest sentence of her life. She said, "My name is Sophia Bennett, and I need to know if I'm too late." At 9:11, Denise Alvarado said, "Ma'am, I already represent someone in this matter, so I can't take you. But I'm going to tell you one thing for free, and then I'm hanging up. Please. Whoever's calling you this morning," Alvarado said, "is deciding right now whether you're a partner or a payment. And ma'am, the fact that he's called twice means he hasn't decided." The line went dead. At 9:40 on February 17th, the Apex Horizon Board of Directors held an emergency meeting that Sophia Bennett was not invited to. Arthur Wells chaired it from a hotel in Cleveland. It lasted 19 minutes. At 10:01, Sophia Bennett received an email with a subject line that said, "Action of the Board," and the body of it was 4 paragraphs long, and she only read the first sentence, which said that effective immediately, she was placed on administrative leave pending an independent investigation. At 10:02, her badge stopped working. At 10:04, Richard Vance, who had recused himself from everything, walked past her office and saw her sitting in it alone with the lights off, and he stopped and he stood in the doorway for a moment, and Sophia looked up. "Richard." "Sophia." 11 years, she said. Vance said nothing. "I built this," she said. "I want you to know that. Whatever they say about me. I built this out of nothing, and I slept in a storage unit, and I made payroll every single month for 6 years before anybody in this industry would return my calls, and every word of that is true." "I know it's true," Richard Vance said. "Then how did this happen?" And Richard Vance, who was 57 and had been a lawyer for 31 years and had a daughter Sophia's age, said the kindest and cruelest thing anyone said to her in the entire ordeal. He said, "Sophia, it happened because it's true." At 10:15, she asked him what that meant. "It means he found you at the exact moment you needed to be believed in," Vance said. "And you've spent 11 years being so proud that nobody gave you anything that you never once checked the one thing somebody did give you." Sophia Bennett sat in the dark in her own office. $600,000, she said. "Yeah." "In 2015. Yeah." "Richard, what am I going to find?" Richard Vance took his hand off the doorframe. "I recused," he said. "Ask a lawyer." At 11:20 on February 17th, Dana Moreau walked into a room in a federal building and sat down across from Daniel Brooks and his new attorney and said, "You have one shot at this, and I want to explain how it works. You do not get to tell me a story. If you tell me a story, we're done. You get to tell me facts I can check, and every fact I check that's true buys you something, and every fact I check that's false costs you double." Daniel nodded. "Say it out loud." "I understand," he said. "Start with the ring," Moreau said. Daniel's attorney touched his arm. Daniel shook it off. "He told me to take it," Daniel said. The room stopped. "Who?" Moreau said. "Vincent." "When?" "January. The end of January. After the signature." Dana Moreau did not move a muscle. "Explain to me," she said, "why a man who is trying to quietly close a merger would tell you to steal a famous heirloom and put it on the CEO's hand in front of 200 people." And Daniel Brooks said the sentence that turned the entire case inside out. He said, because he wanted it to fail. At 11:26, Dana Moreau said, "Say that again." He wanted the merger to fail, Daniel said. He wanted it to blow up publicly, and he wanted Sophia's fingerprints all over the blow-up, and he wanted it to look like a scandal instead of an audit. Why? Because he can't buy Apex at the deal price, Daniel said. He never could. The whole thing was built when Apex was worth $4 billion. It's not worth $4 billion, it's worth maybe 1.2, and the difference is the whole, and if he closes at the agreed price, he's the one who eats $190 million. Moreau's pen was not moving. But if the deal collapses because of a scandal, Daniel said, the board fires Sophia, the stock craters. The fraud gets pinned on her personally, and in 8 weeks, he buys the whole company out of the wreckage for $600 million, and he's a hero for cleaning it up. Silence. He didn't want the door, Daniel said. He wanted the fire. At 11:31, Dana Moreau said very slowly, "Then why forge Emma's signature at all?" And Daniel Brooks looked at the table. "Because somebody had to," he said. "Mr. Brooks." "Because there had to be a crime," Daniel said, and his voice went to pieces. "Don't you get it? He needed a crime that wasn't his. He needed a body. He gave me the pen, and he told me it was the only way to protect her, and I sat in my kitchen in Vermont week, and I practiced my wife's signature for 9 days, and I thought I was being clever." He looked up. "I wasn't the man running the con," Daniel Brooks said. "I was the con." At 11:40, Dana Moreau left the room and stood in a hallway for 90 seconds with her eyes closed. Then she called Olivia Parker and said 4 words. She said, "Get Emma in here." At 2 in the afternoon on February 17th, Emma Carter sat in a federal conference room and listened to 16 minutes of her husband's proffer read back to her in a flat voice by a woman with no expression. When it was done, Emma said, "So the proposal was designed to be seen." "Yes, by me." Dana Moreau said, "Emma." "No, say it." Emma's voice was very steady. "Rachel Kim texted me at 4:15 on Valentine's Day. Out of nowhere. A woman I'd met twice, who told her to—" Moreau said nothing. "Nobody told her," Emma said, answering herself, and she felt it land. "That's the thing. Nobody had to. He didn't need to invite me. He just needed the party to be big enough and loud enough and public enough that somebody would." He built a room with 200 people in it, and 50 phones, and $11,000 of roses, and he made absolutely sure that the one thing that would detonate the whole thing was sitting on a woman's finger, where anybody who knew me would see it. She looked up. "He wasn't proposing to Sophia," Emma said. "He was lighting a fuse and standing on it." "Emma," Moreau said, "do you understand what that makes you?" "Yes," Emma said. "I was supposed to be the bomb." At 2:11, she stood up and walked to the window and did not say anything for a full minute. Then she said, "Dana." "Yeah." "He miscalculated." "How?" Emma turned around, and there was something on her face that made Dana Moreau put her pen down. "He needed me to lose my mind," Emma said. "That's the whole plan. Look at it. The wife shows up. The wife screams. The wife throws the cake. The wife makes a scene, and the story is, unhinged heiress ruins CEO's engagement, and the merger dies in the noise, and everybody's looking at me and Sophia, and nobody is looking at him. And instead, I asked who gave him the ring," Emma said, "and he couldn't answer. Dana, that's why it went wrong. Not because I was smart, because I was quiet. He built a machine that only works if the woman screams, and I've spent 5 years married to a man who taught me that screaming doesn't work." Dana Moreau sat back in her chair. "Jesus," she said. "He trained me," Emma said. "For 5 years, he trained me not to scream, and then he built a plan that needed me to." At 2:40 on February 17th, Dana Moreau said, "Okay, so how do we get him?" And Emma Carter said, "You don't." "Excuse me, you can't." Emma sat back down. "Dana, be honest with me. What do you have on Vincent Hale right now, actually? Today?" Moreau's jaw worked. "I have the uncorroborated proffer of a man who submitted a fake photograph to a police department 3 days ago," she said. "So nothing." "So a defense attorney's Christmas morning," Moreau said. "And what do you need?" "I need him to say it," Moreau said. "To someone, once." "He won't say it to you." "No." "He won't say it to Sophia. He won't say it to Daniel." "No." Emma Carter looked at her, and she said, "He'll say it to me." The room went absolutely silent. Olivia Parker stood up so fast her chair went over. Absolutely not. Olivia. Emma Whitmore Carter, absolutely not. I will quit. I will physically remove you from this building. He called me, Emma said. Twice now. He's called me twice. That is exactly why the answer is no. He wants to have lunch, Emma said. He said he's the only person who'll tell me the truth. Olivia, that's not a man managing a risk. That's a man who wants something. He wants your signature. No, Emma said. And Dana Moreau said quietly, no, he doesn't. Both women turned. Moreau was looking at the table. He doesn't need her signature, she said slowly. The deal's dead. He doesn't want it to close. Remember, Daniel just told us that. Vincent Hale does not need one single thing from Emma Carter. Then why is he calling her? Olivia said. And Dana Moreau looked up, and her face was the color of paper. Because Margaret said no to him 20 years ago, she said. At 2:51 in the afternoon on February 17th, Emma Carter understood the last piece. It's not about money, she said. Emma. It was never about the money. Emma's hands were flat on the table. He's worth $2 billion. Dana, what's $190 million to a man worth $2 billion? It's not nothing, but it's not 20 years. Emma, sit down. I am sitting down. She was very calm. He bought a table at her benefit and he didn't come. He bought 10 seats at $40,000 and he stayed home. Why would a man do that? Why pay $40,000 to not be in a room? Nobody answered. Because she'd have seen him, Emma said. She'd have seen him across the room, and she'd have known, and he knew she'd have known, because she'd already looked at him once in a 9-minute meeting in 2006 and decided what he was. Emma looked up. So he sent a 26-year-old, she said. He sent a boy with a good haircut to sit at her table and be charming, and she liked him for exactly one evening, and 8 years later, that boy stole her ring. The room did not breathe. He's not trying to buy the foundation, Emma said. He's trying to make Margaret Whitmore wrong. And Dana Moreau put both hands over her face. Oh, that's it, she said. That's the whole thing. That's the entire case. He wants to be able to say she was a stupid old woman who couldn't see what he was, Emma said. And the only way to prove that is to take everything she built and everyone she loved and show her. And she's dead, Dana. She's been dead 6 years. There's only one person left he can show it to. Emma Carter stood up. Me, she said. At 3:05 on February 17th, Olivia Parker said in a voice Emma had never heard from her, Emma, honey, he is a very dangerous man, and he is angry at a dead woman, and you are the only thing left of her. I know. You don't know. Olivia. Emma took her hand. She wrote me a letter. I know she did. She wrote, I made the lock so loud that when someone finally picked it, you would hear it. Olivia's eyes filled. She didn't mean the merger, Emma said. She meant him. She spent the last year of her life building something loud, and she did it because she knew she wasn't going to be here. Emma turned to Dana Moreau. Dana, she said, set the lunch. At 3:10, Moreau said, Emma, if you do this, you do it my way. You wear it, every word. And there is a hard rule, and if you break it, I pull you out, and you never see him again. What's the rule? You do not accuse him of anything, Moreau said. Not once. You don't say fraud, you don't say forgery, you don't say the word merger. Emma, look at me. He has been in rooms with the smartest lawyers in this country for 20 years, and not one of them has ever gotten a sentence out of him. And do you know why? Why? Because they all went in wanting to win, Moreau said. You cannot beat him, do you understand? You will not out-talk him. He will out-talk you in 11 seconds, and he will enjoy it. Then what do I do? Dana Moreau leaned all the way forward. You let him teach you, she said. Emma frowned. He's been waiting 20 years to explain himself to a Whitmore, Moreau said. That's what this is. He doesn't want to threaten you. He doesn't want to buy you. Emma, he wants to be understood by the only living person whose grandmother told him no. So you're going to sit down across from him, and you're going to be exactly what he's been dreaming about for 2 decades, which is what an audience Dana Moreau said. At 4 in the afternoon on February 17th, Emma Carter sent a text message to a number she had not saved. She typed it 4 times. The first one said too much. The second one said too little. The third one had the word why in it, and Moreau made her delete it. The fourth one was 6 words. Emma looked at it for a long moment. Then she thought about a 90-year-old woman in a room that smelled like lemon oil pressing a box into her hand, saying, "You will know when." She hit send. The message said, "Mr. Hale, lunch. You pick the place." The reply came back in 90 seconds. It said, "I'm delighted. Tuesday, 1 o'clock. And Emma wears something warm. We'll be outside." Emma stared at it. "Why does that scare me?" she said. Dana Moreau read it over her shoulder, and her face did something Emma did not like at all. "Because outside means no cameras," Moreau said. And a second message came through. It said, "One more thing. Bring the ring." Emma's blood went to ice. "He doesn't know," she whispered. "Know what?" Emma looked up. "The ring's in evidence," she said. "It's been in an evidence locker since Sunday morning. It's not mine. I can't bring it. Dana, he doesn't know where the ring is." And Dana Moreau said very slowly, "Emma, he's not asking you to bring it." "Then what is he doing?" Moreau's eyes came up. "He's checking," she said, "whether you'd lie to him." They spent Saturday night arguing about the ring. "Tell him the truth," Olivia said. "No. Emma, he's not asking a question. Olivia, he's setting a trap with 4 doors, and he wants to see which one I walk through." Emma had the text open on the table in front of her, and she had read it 40 times. "If I say I'll bring it, I'm a liar and he owns me. If I say the police have it, I've told him exactly where his own evidence is, and he knows I'm cooperating. If I ignore it, I'm scared. If I say no, I'm hostile." Dana Moreau, who had not gone home, said, "There's a 5th door." Emma looked up. "What?" "Ask him why he wants it," Moreau said. Olivia said, "Dana, that's insane. That's engaging." "That's the only door he didn't build," Moreau said. "Look at the 4. All 4 of them are answers. He spent 20 years in rooms where everybody answers him. Nobody asks him anything." At 11:14 on Saturday night, February 17th, Emma Carter typed 6 words and sent them. She wrote, "Why would you want me to?" The reply took 19 minutes. 19 minutes. Emma sat and watched the screen, and Olivia poured herself something, and Moreau did not blink. And at 11:33, the phone lit up. It said, "Because I've never seen it in person." Emma read it out loud. Nobody said anything. Then Dana Moreau said quietly, "He's not lying." "What?" "Emma, that's true. That's a true sentence." Moreau leaned in. "He's been circling that family for 20 years, and he's never touched a single piece of it. He's never been in the house. He's never been in the room. He bought a table and stayed home. Emma, he has never in his life laid eyes on anything that belonged to Margaret Whitmore." Olivia Parker made a small sound. "He wants to see it," Emma said slowly. "He wants to hold it," Moreau said. "There's a difference, and the difference is the whole man." At 11:40, Emma typed, "Then I'll bring what I have." She hit send before either of them could stop her. "Emma?" "It's not a lie," Emma said. "Olivia, it isn't. I do have something." "You have the letter," Olivia said. Emma did not answer. At 9 in the morning on Sunday, February 18th, Sophia Bennett walked into the lobby of a building on Lexington with her hair in a ponytail and no makeup and a canvas tote bag, and she asked for a lawyer named Michael Ferraro, and Michael Ferraro's assistant said, "Do you have an appointment?" Sophia said, "No, I have 11 years. At 9:40, Ferraro looked at what was in the tote bag and said, "Ma'am, I need you to stop talking and I need to make a phone call." "To who?" "To the government," he said, "before somebody else does." At 9:51, Michael Ferraro called the Southern District and said, "I have Sophia Bennett in my conference room and she wants to proffer." At 9:53, Dana Moreau, standing in her own kitchen in Brooklyn on a Sunday morning in sweatpants, closed her eyes and said, "God bless America." At 10:15, Moreau called Emma. She flipped. Emma sat down on the hotel bed. "Sophia, Sophia, why?" "Because Vincent called her 11 times on Saturday, and she didn't answer," Moreau said. And then he stopped calling, and Emma, that's what did it. The stopping. She said she sat in her kitchen and realized that a man who stops calling has stopped negotiating. At 10:20, Emma said, "What did she bring?" There was a pause. She brought the wire, Moreau said. What wire? 2015, Moreau said. $600,000. Emma Sophia Bennett kept the original wire confirmation for 11 years, in a shoebox. She said she kept it because it was the day her life changed and she wanted to be able to look at it. Emma stood up. And it didn't come from Vincent Hale, Moreau said. The room tilted. It came from an entity called Riverstone Legacy Partners, Moreau said, which is the same Delaware LLC that bought Table 19 at your grandmother's benefit. Emma put her hand on the wall. So he funded Sophia, she said, 1 year before he funded Daniel. Emma, Moreau said. He funded Sophia 3 years before he found Daniel. He built the company first. At 10:26 on Sunday morning, Emma Carter understood the shape of the thing all the way down. He didn't find a company and put a man in it, she said. No. He built a company so he'd have somewhere to put a man. Emma? Dana, he built an entire technology company out of a woman sleeping in a storage unit in Newark, and he did it so that 8 years later, he'd have a room to walk a 26-year-old into. Emma, listen to me. That's not a plan, Emma said. She was laughing, and it was not a good laugh. Dana, that's not a business plan. That's not revenge. That's a life. He spent his life on this, on my grandmother saying no in a 9-minute meeting. Dana Moreau was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Emma, I want you to think very carefully about what you just said, because on Tuesday you're going to sit down across from a man who spent 20 years of his one life on a grudge, and I need you to understand that he will not experience it as a grudge. He'll experience it as a career. At 11, Emma called her sister. Claire. Em, can I ask you something and you tell me the truth? Always. When I met Daniel, Emma said, that night, at the benefit, do you remember me calling you? Long pause. You called me at 1 a.m, Claire said. I remember because I was 8 months pregnant and I was furious. What did I say? Claire made a sound. You said, she said slowly, I met somebody and he didn't know who I was. Emma closed her eyes. Emma. Yeah. You said for 2 hours he had no idea and I could just be a person. Claire's voice broke. You said that. You said it like it was the greatest gift anybody had ever given you. Emma sat down on the floor of a hotel room. He knew, she said. Emma, he knew before he crossed the room. Claire, that was the whole thing. That was the entire product. They knew that was what I wanted more than anything in the world, and they built a man who could give it to me, and I have been grateful for 8 years for the one thing that was the con. Claire was crying. I'm sorry. Don't, Emma said. Claire, listen, don't be sorry because you just gave me something. What? Emma stood up. Somebody told them, she said. At 11:11 on Sunday morning, February 18th, Emma Carter said out loud for the first time the question that would end everything. How did Vincent Hale know, she said in April of that year, that the thing Margaret Whitmore's granddaughter wanted most in the world was to be talked to by somebody who didn't know her last name? Silence on the line. Emma, Claire whispered, that's not in a magazine. No, that's not in a Google search. No. Who knew that? Emma's mouth had gone completely dry. 11 people, she said. At 12:40 on Sunday, Emma sat in Olivia Parker's kitchen and said, Olivia, you told me 11 people called her Margaret. Olivia set her cup down. Emma, name them. Honey, name them Olivia. And Olivia Parker, 71 years old in a sweatshirt on a Sunday, in her own kitchen went as gray as her hair. I didn't say Vincent Hale wasn't one of them, she said slowly. I said I could name them all by 5 o'clock. Emma, I never made the list. Make it. Emma. Make the list, Olivia. Olivia Parker got up and walked out of the room, and she was gone for 4 minutes, and when she came back, she had a legal pad, and she sat down, and she wrote, and it took her 9 minutes, and Emma watched her write 11 names and cross out none of them. Then Olivia turned the pad around. Emma read it, and on the 7th line was a name that stopped her heart. Olivia, she said. Why is Tomas Reyes on this list? Olivia's head came up. What? Tomas Reyes? Emma said. The development associate. The kid who went to Yonkers on Friday and photographed the ledger for us. Olivia stared at the pad. Emma, that's not the same Tomas Reyes. That's Tomas Reyes Sr. He ran development for your grandmother for 19 years. He retired in... She stopped. He retired in the spring of that year, Olivia said. The kitchen was completely silent. Olivia, Emma said, who made the seating chart for table 19? At 1:05 on Sunday afternoon, Olivia Parker called Tomas Reyes Jr. and said, "Sweetheart, I need to ask you something about your father." At 1:40, the kid called back, and he was crying so hard Emma could barely understand him. "He's got dementia," Tomas said. "He's in a place in Rye. He doesn't know me some days." "Mrs. Parker, why are you asking about my dad?" Olivia looked at Emma. Emma took the phone. "Tomas," she said gently, "this is Emma Carter. I know who you are. Ma'am, I've seen the video. Tomas, on Friday you went to Yonkers and you photographed a ledger for me and I never thanked you. Thank you. It mattered more than you know. Ma'am. Tomas, when did your father retire?" Long pause. "June," he said. "June of that year." "And when did he get sick?" "They said it started early. They said maybe 4-5 years before anybody noticed." His voice went small. "Ma'am, why?" Emma closed her eyes. "Tomas," she said, "did your father ever mention a man named Vincent Hale?" And Tomas Reyes said the thing that broke the case open. He said, "Ma'am, Mr. Hale paid for the home." At 1:43 on Sunday afternoon, February 18th, Emma Carter sat in a kitchen with a phone against her ear and did not make a sound. "Ma'am." "Say that again," Emma said. "Mr. Hale paid for the home." Tomas sounded confused now and scared and young. "He's been paying for 11 years. Ma'am, he calls it Christmas. He came to my mother's funeral. He's the only person from that whole world who ever called us back. When Dad got sick, the foundation sent flowers, and Mr. Hale sent a check every month for 11 years, and he never once asked for anything. And I don't understand why you're asking me this." Emma opened her eyes, and she said in a voice like nothing, "Tomas, I need you to sit down." "Ma'am, he asked for something," Emma said. "I promise you he asked for something, and I need you to think very hard, and I need you to tell me if your father ever came home from work and talked about me." Silence. Long, long silence. Then Tomas Reyes said, "Ma'am, my dad loved you." Emma's throat closed. "He talked about you all the time," Tomas said. "He said that girl doesn't want any of it. He said she's the only one in the whole family who'd be happier if the money went away. He said all she wants is for somebody to walk up to her and not know." Emma Carter put her hand over her mouth. "Ma'am," Tomas said. "Ma'am, why are you crying?" At 1:51, Emma handed the phone to Olivia Parker and walked out of the kitchen and stood in a hallway with her back against a wall. She was not crying because she had been betrayed. She was crying because she had not been. Because an old man who loved her had said a beautiful, true thing about her at a dinner or a Christmas party or a bar, the way people do, the way anyone does, and a very patient man had been standing close enough to hear it and had written it down and had spent $40,000 and 8 years and an entire human life building a machine around one sentence. Tomas Reyes Sr. had not sold her. He had loved her out loud in front of the wrong man, and that Emma understood standing in that hallway was the actual weapon. That was the thing Vincent Hale did. He did not corrupt people. He listened to good people say true things, and then he used the true things. At 2:15, Emma came back into the kitchen, and Olivia Parker was off the phone and her face was terrible. "Emma, I know. Emma, we cannot use that boy's father. He has dementia. He can't testify. He can't consent, and Dana will subpoena those payment records in about 9 minutes, and that family will be destroyed on the news by Thursday, and they didn't do anything." "I know. That kid drove to Yonkers on a Friday night for you." "I know, Olivia. So what do we do?" Emma Carter sat down across from her grandmother's lawyer, and she said, "We don't tell Dana." Olivia Parker's mouth opened. "Emma, she's a federal prosecutor. That is It's not evidence," Emma said. "Olivia, listen to me. What is it? It's a check to a nursing home. It's not a crime. It's the single most generous thing Vincent Hale has ever done in his life, and it's the most evil, and a jury would look at it and see a man paying for a sick employee's care, and Dana would have to spend 6 weeks trying to explain to 12 people why that's monstrous, and she'd lose. Olivia stopped. "That's true," she said slowly. "It's not evidence," Emma said. "It's a key." "A key to what?" Emma looked at her. "To him," she said. At 3 on Sunday afternoon, Dana Moreau called and said, "We have a problem." "What?" Vincent Hale's lawyers just sent a letter to the Apex board offering to renegotiate the merger price down to $1.4 billion, citing material adverse change. Olivia said, "That's not a problem, that's a confession." "That's not a confession, that's a Tuesday," Moreau said. "Olivia, it's a legitimate business move. Any lawyer in the country would advise it. There was literally a scandal. The stock-cratered MAC clauses exist for exactly this." "Emma, do you understand what he just did?" Emma understood. "He made it legal," she said. "He made it legal," Moreau said. "He blew up a merger to buy a company at 1/3 of the price, and now he's just a buyer being prudent, and I have a man in a proffer room saying Vincent told me to steal a ring, and Emma, that's it. That's what I have. One guy with a fake photograph." At 3:11, Moreau said, "The lunch is everything." At 4 in the afternoon on Sunday, Emma Carter did something she had not done since Valentine's Day. She went home. Olivia argued. Moreau argued. Emma went anyway, and she stood in her own apartment for the first time in 4 days, and the closet door was open, and the box was on the shelf empty because the ring was in a locker in a federal building. And she stood there and understood something that she had not let herself understand. She was not angry at Daniel. She had been trying to be angry at Daniel for 4 days, and it would not come, and she had assumed it was shock, and it was not shock. It was that he was too small. At 4:20, she called Dana Moreau. "Dana, Daniel's not a defendant." "Emma, he's absolutely a defendant. He's about 11 defendants." "No, listen to me." Emma sat on the floor of her closet. "You said he's not your target. He's not. But he's also not a witness. Dana, he's an exhibit." Meaning Vincent Hale built him, Emma said. "You want the jury to understand what this man does. Don't put a spreadsheet in front of them. Put Daniel in front of them. Put a 26-year-old kid who got a seat at a table and 8 years later is looking at 20 years, and let Vincent Hale sit at the defense table and watch a jury look at what's left of him." Silence. "Emma," Moreau said, "that's not how—" "Dana, how many people has he done this to?" The line went quiet. "That's the case," Emma said. "Not the money, not the merger, not my ring. Dana, how many Daniels are there? How many storage units? He's 60 years old, and he's been doing this since before I was born, and every single one of them is walking around out there thinking they made a bad choice." Dana Moreau did not say anything for 11 seconds. Then she said, "There's a man in Chicago." Emma stopped breathing. "What?" "There's a man in Chicago," Moreau said slowly. 2009. He did 8 years, securities fraud. And every single day of those 8 years he told anybody who'd listen that a guy had told him to do it, and nobody believed him because he was a liar who'd already lied about everything else. And Emma, that's the trick, isn't it? That's the whole trick. He only ever uses people nobody will believe. Dana. "Yeah." "Is that man out?" "He's out," Moreau said. "He drives a truck." "Call him." At 6 on Sunday evening, Dana Moreau called a man named Warren Deeds in Joliet, Illinois, and Warren Deeds listened for 90 seconds and then hung up. At 6:40, he called back. At 6:42, he said, "Is she real?" "Who?" "The cake lady," Warren Deeds said. "Is she real? Because I watched that video 11 times, and I want to know if she's real or if she's another one of his." At 7, Emma Carter got on the phone with a stranger in a truck in Illinois. "Mrs. Carter." "Mr. Deeds." "I did 8 years," he said. "I want you to know that up front. I did 8 years, and I was guilty of every single thing they said I did." "Okay. But I want to tell you how I met him," Warren Deeds said. And Emma Carter closed her eyes and listened, and it took him 20 minutes, and by the end of it, she was sitting on the floor again because it was the same story. It was word for word the same story. A room, a man who asked 11 questions and answered none. a detail remembered 6 weeks later, a gift with no strings that turned out to be all string. And the exact sentence, the sentence Sophia Bennett had heard in a storage unit in Newark, and Daniel Brooks had heard at a bar, and Emma Carter had heard for 8 years across a kitchen table. I believed in you when nobody else did. Mrs. Carter, Warren Deeds said, can I tell you the thing nobody believes? Yes. He came to see me, Deeds said, in prison, year 3. He drove out and he sat down and he looked at me through the glass for about a minute and he didn't say anything. Emma's skin went cold. And then what? And then he said, I'm sorry it was you, Warren Deeds said. And he got up and he left. Ma'am, he drove 4 hours to say 6 words to a man in a jumpsuit and then he drove home. At 7:22 on Sunday night, February 18th, Emma Carter said, Mr. Deeds, why do you think he did that? And Warren Deeds, who had had 8 years and a truck and a lot of highway to think about it, said, because he needed somebody to know. Emma opened her eyes. Ma'am, Deeds said, that man is the loneliest human being on this earth. He's done the greatest work of his life and there's nobody he can show it to. So every once in a while he's got to drive 4 hours and look at it through glass. At 7:30, Emma hung up the phone and turned to Dana Moreau and Olivia Parker. And she said, I know what to do on Tuesday. At 8 in the morning on Monday, February 19th, 3 things happened in 11 minutes. At 8:02, the Apex Horizon board rejected Vincent Hale's revised offer. At 8:06, the stock fell another 19%. At 8:13, Marcus Webb, security guard, 63 years old, 11 months from his pension, walked into a federal building on foot because he did not want to be seen in a car and handed Dana Moreau a USB drive. Sir, what is this? That's every Saturday morning for 8 months, Marcus Webb said. I pulled it Thursday night before they knew to look. Moreau stared at him. Mr. Webb, you're going to lose your job. Ma'am, I've been standing at that desk for 19 years watching men walk past me like I'm furniture, Marcus said. That lady looked me in the eye. At 8:40, Dana Moreau watched 14 seconds of footage and had to stand up, because on the screen at 5:02 in the morning on a Saturday in October, a man in a gray coat walked through the lobby of the Apex Horizon Tower. He did not badge in. Somebody unlocked the door for him, and he had never in 11 years been listed on a single visitor log, in a single meeting, in a single document, in a single email, in any record of any kind connecting Vincent Hale to Apex Horizon Technologies. At 8:44, Dana Moreau said out loud to an empty room, "You've never been in the building." At 8:45, she sat back down. "Except you've been in the building 400 times. At 9 on Monday morning, Moreau called Emma. "Emma, change of plan. We're not doing the lunch." Emma sat up. "What?" "I've got him," Moreau said. "Emma, I've got him in the lobby. 8 months of Saturdays. He's been running that company personally, and there is not one piece of paper in the world that says so, and now there's 11 hours of video. Dana, I don't need you to sit across from him. Dana, what's the charge?" Silence. "What's the charge, Dana?" And Dana Moreau, standing in a federal building on a Monday morning with the best evidence of her career in her hand, said the truest thing anyone said in the entire case. She said, "Walking into a building." Emma said nothing. "It's not a crime," Moreau said, and her voice cracked for the first time. "Emma, it's not a crime. It's a man visiting a company he's invested in. It's early. That's all it is. It's early and it's weird and it's not a crime." "Dana, I have 11 hours of a man walking through a lobby." "Dana, listen to me." Emma stood up. "It's not evidence. It's a key." "Emma." "He's never been in the building," Emma said. "That's what you said. 20 years and no paper. Dana, do you understand what that means about him? He's never been anywhere. He's never had a photograph taken. He didn't come to my grandmother's table. He didn't come to his own table." She started walking. "There is not one single room in 20 years, Emma said, where Vincent Hale has been in the same place as the thing he built." "Emma." "He's 60 years old," Emma said, "and he has never once been allowed to be in the room." Dana Moreau said very quietly, "And on Tuesday, you're going to sit down in a room with him." "Yes." Emma, he's going to know something's wrong. He's smarter than every single person on this call. Yes, Emma said. That's why it's going to work. At noon on Monday, they wired her. It took 40 minutes. Moreau explained it 3 times. The rule, the extraction phrase, the hard stop. Say it back. I don't accuse him of anything, Emma said. Again. I don't say fraud. I don't say forgery. I don't say merger. I don't say Daniel unless he says Daniel first. Again. Dana. Emma, say it again because there's going to be a moment about 40 minutes in when he says something about your grandmother and you are going to want to defend her, and if you defend her, you lose him. Emma stopped. What? Moreau looked at her. He's going to insult Margaret, she said. He has to. Emma, it's the only reason he's coming. And the second you defend her, he wins, because that's the whole thing he's been waiting 20 years to watch. Emma's jaw set. Then what do I do? You agree with him, Dana Moreau said. Olivia Parker made a sound like she'd been hit. Dana. You agree with him, Moreau said. And Emma, it's going to be the hardest thing you've ever done in your life, harder than the rooftop. And I want you to decide right now whether you can, because if you can't, we don't go. At 12:40 on Monday afternoon, Emma Carter went into a bathroom in a federal building and put her hands on either side of a sink and looked at herself for a long time. And then she took her grandmother's letter out of her bag and read one line. Do not spend 1 hour of your life proving you were not stupid. She folded it up. She came out and said, I can do it. At 1, Moreau said, last thing. If he says one word about hurting you, you say the phrase and we come in. He won't. Emma. Dana, he's not going to hurt me, Emma said. He's going to be so glad to see me. At 8 in the evening on Monday, February 19th, Emma Carter's phone buzzed. Vincent Hale. It said, tomorrow. Are you nervous? Emma looked at it for a full minute, then she typed, yes, send. The reply came in 11 seconds. It said, good. Nervous people tell the truth. Sleep well, Emma. At 8:04, a second message. It said, I've been looking forward to this for a very long time. At 11 that night, Emma could not sleep, and at 11:15, she called Claire. Em, did I wake you? I've got a 2-year-old. I don't sleep. I lie down aggressively. Claire's voice went soft. What's wrong? Claire, can I ask you something insane? Yes. Emma sat in the dark. Do you think Grandma was wrong? Silence. Emma. No, listen. Emma's voice was very steady and very strange. In 2006, she sat in a room with a 38-year-old man for 9 minutes, and she decided what he was, and she killed him. She killed him, Claire. She said no, and the whole industry heard about it in a week, and he spent 4 years crawling. And what if she was wrong? Em. What if he was just a guy with a bad year, Emma said, and a 90-year-old woman looked at him for 9 minutes and destroyed his life, and everything he's done since is what happens to a man after that. Claire was quiet for a long time. Then she said, Emma, do you actually believe that? No. Emma said, then why are you saying it? Because tomorrow I have to say it to his face, Emma said, and mean it. At 1 in the morning on Tuesday, February 20th, Emma Carter finally slept for 3 hours. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, she sat down across from Vincent Hale at a table outside in February in the cold, with a wire taped to her ribs, and 2 agents in a van 400 feet away, and Dana Moreau listening in a car. Vincent Hale stood up when she arrived. That was the first thing. He stood up and he pulled her chair out and he said, Emma, thank you for coming. I know what it cost you. And Emma Carter, who had spent 4 days learning what this man had done to her entire life, sat down across from him and felt something she had not prepared for at all. She felt sorry for him. It went through her like a nail. It was gone in a second. But she felt it, and she understood in that instant exactly how a woman in a storage unit and a boy at a bar had ended up here, because the man across from her was warm and attentive and entirely, completely present. and he was looking at her the way people look at something they have wanted for a very long time. "You look tired," Vincent said. "I am." "Have you eaten?" "No." "Then let me order for you," he said. "It's the one thing I'm actually good at." And Emma said, "Okay." At 1:04, Vincent Hale ordered lunch for two in fluent Italian, and then he folded his hands and said, "Ask me anything." Emma looked at him. "That's not how this works," she said. "Isn't it?" "No." She kept her hands still. "Mr. Hale, everybody's been telling me for 4 days that you're going to run me. Olivia thinks it. The prosecutor thinks it. My sister thinks it. So I'm not going to ask you anything because whatever I ask, you'll have an answer and it'll be a good one, and I'll go home feeling like I understand something." Vincent Hale smiled. "That's the most intelligent thing anyone said to me in 9 years, he said. "So instead," Emma said, "I'm going to tell you why I came." "Please." Emma took a breath, and she said, "I think my grandmother was wrong about you." The temperature of the entire table changed. Vincent Hale did not move, but something behind his eyes did something enormous, and Emma saw it happen, and she understood that Dana Moreau had been right about every single thing. "Say that again," Vincent said. 9 minutes, Emma said. 2006, Hale Riverstone. She sat in a room with you for 9 minutes, and she said no, and she never told anyone why. Not her lawyer, not my mother, not me. Emma. "And I've been thinking about it for 2 days, Emma said. "And I keep landing in the same place, and the place is what could a person possibly have shown her in 9 minutes?" Vincent Hale was completely still. 9 minutes? Emma said. "You can't be evil in 9 minutes. You can't even be dishonest in 9 minutes. Not really, not so she'd see it. So either she was a witch, or she saw something real, or Mr. Hale." She looked up. "Or she was just an old woman who'd already decided before you walked in." At 1:11 in the afternoon, Vincent Hale said she had. 400 feet away in a van, Dana Moreau put her hand over her mouth. "Say more," Emma said. And Vincent Hale, 60 years old, worth $2 billion, who had never once in 20 years given a complete sentence to anyone, leaned back in his chair in the cold and gave Emma Carter the thing he had been carrying since before she could drive. "She'd made up her mind in 1998, he said. Emma frowned. "That's 8 years before 1998, Vincent said. "I was 30. I was a nobody. I was an analyst at a firm that doesn't exist anymore, and I was at a dinner, and I was seated at the very end of a table the way you seat a nobody, and Margaret Whitmore was at the other end." He turned his glass a half circle. "And she was talking about her granddaughter," he said. Emma's blood stopped. "You'd have been, what, 10? Vincent said. 11. "She was telling a story about you at a birthday party. You'd given your presents away. All of them. Some other child had cried about something, and you'd just handed her the whole pile, and Margaret was telling this table of 40 adults about it, and she was so proud she could barely get the words out." Emma could not breathe. "And a man next to her said something like, 'Well, she'll grow out of it,'" Vincent said. "And Margaret said no. She said, 'God, I hope not. She's the only one of us who came out clean.'" Vincent Hale looked up. "And I thought," he said, "that is the most extraordinary thing I've ever heard a rich person say." At 1:19, Emma Carter said in a voice she did not recognize, "That's not the story I came for." "No," Vincent agreed, "but it's the one that's true. Mr. Hale, I went up to her afterward," he said, "at the Coates. I was 30, and I had a rented tux, and I said something ridiculous. I said, 'Mrs. Whitmore, I want to work for someone like you.' And she looked at me. Emma, your grandmother looked at me for about 2 seconds, and she said, 'No, you don't. You want to be someone like me. Those are different, and only one of them is available.'" He smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was much worse. It was fond. "And she was right," Vincent Hale said. "Emma, she was completely right, and I've thought about it every week for 28 years, and I want you to understand that I'm not telling you this as a complaint. She was right. She looked at a 30-year-old nobody in a rented tux for 2 seconds, and she read me all the way down to the bottom, and she was kind about it, which was worse. At 1:26 in the afternoon on February 20th, Emma Carter understood that she had been wrong about everything. "It's not 2006, she said. "No, it was never 2006. "Emma," Vincent Hale said gently. 2006 was a formality. By 2006, I'd been building the answer for 8 years. The answer to what? And Vincent Hale said, to whether she was right. At 1:30 the food came and neither of them touched it. 28 years, Emma said. Yes, you've spent 28 years on a sentence. Emma, everyone spends their life on a sentence, Vincent said. Most people just never find out which one. So what was the plan? Emma said. Actually, say it plainly, once. And Vincent Hale looked at her, and Emma Carter saw the exact moment he decided, and it was the loneliest thing she had ever watched in her life. The plan, he said, was to prove that the clean one comes out dirty. Silence. That's all, he said. That's it. That's the whole 28 years. Margaret Whitmore said her granddaughter was the only one who came out clean, and she said it like it was a fact about the world, and I have spent my entire adult life proving that it is a fact about her bank account. Emma's hands were shaking under the table. So you built a man, she said. I found a man. You put him at my table. I put him in a room, Vincent said. Emma, that's all I ever do. I put people in rooms. What they do in the room is theirs. He forged my signature. Yes, he did. Because you gave him a pen. Emma, Vincent Hale said, and he leaned forward, and his voice was so kind. I have never in my life given anybody a pen. I've given people $600,000. I've given people a seat. I've given people the one thing they'd been starving for, and then I've sat back and I've watched what they do with it, and every single time, Emma, they reach for the pen themselves. At 1:41 in the afternoon, 400 feet away in a van, an agent said, "Ma'am, is that it? Is that enough?" And Dana Moreau said, "No." What he just said he puts people in rooms, Moreau said. Every venture capitalist in America says that. He hasn't said one word I can use. At 1:42, Emma Carter said, "So did it work?" Vincent Hale blinked. "I'm sorry." 28 years, Emma said. "Did it work? Am I dirty?" And Vincent Hale looked at her across a table, and for the first time in the entire conversation, he did not have anything ready. "That's what I came to find out," he said. At 1:44, Emma said, "Then I'll tell you." She reached into her bag. She did not take out a ring because the ring was in an evidence locker 11 blocks away. She took out a folded piece of paper, 4 days old, soft, at the creases written by a dying woman's hand, and she put it on the table between them. "You asked me to bring what I had," Emma said. "This is what I have." Vincent Hale looked at it. He did not reach for it. And Emma watched a 60-year-old man look at a piece of paper with her grandmother's handwriting on it, the way a starving man looks through a window, and she understood finally completely what Warren Deeds had meant in a truck in Illinois. "Is that?" Vincent said, and his voice did something. "She wrote it in 2019, Emma said, 9 months before she died. She left it with her lawyer with instructions." "What does it say?" "Mr. Hale," Emma said. "You've been trying to get into this family for 28 years. Ask me properly." At 1:47 in the afternoon on February 20th, on a cold sidewalk in Manhattan, Vincent Hale said, "Please." And Emma Carter picked up the letter and read him one line. She read, "I went to my lawyer the next week and I changed the consent provision to unanimous, and 3 men told me I was senile, and I did it anyway." She looked up. "That's October," Emma said. "October 2018. Mr. Hale, do you know what happened in October 2018? Vincent Hale said nothing. "Daniel sat in her front room for 9 minutes, Emma said, and asked her 3 questions about the board. Silence. "She changed the entire structure of a 9-figure foundation in 1 week, Emma said, because of a 9-minute conversation with a boy you sent. And then Emma Carter did the thing she had decided to do at 7:30 on Sunday night, sitting on the floor of a closet, listening to a truck driver in Illinois. She folded the letter. She put it back in her bag. She saw it coming, Emma said quietly. Mr. Hale, she saw all of it 28 years ago at a coat check in 2 seconds, and she wrote you into a document in 2018, and she never once said your name out loud." Vincent Hale's hands were flat on the table. "You've spent your whole life," Emma said, "trying to prove she was wrong about you." She stood up. "And she never thought about you again," Emma said. And Vincent Hale, 60 years old, worth $2 billion, who had not raised his voice in 20 years, said that's not true. Emma stopped. She thought about it, he said. She changed the document. She changed the document because of a boy, Emma said. She didn't know you existed. She knew. Mr. Hale. She knew, Vincent Hale said, and his voice came up, and 400 feet away, Dana Moreau grabbed the arm of the man next to her. She knew exactly what she was doing. She looked at me at that coat check, and she wrote it down. Somewhere that woman never forgot a face in her life. And I have spent 28 years and $190 million of somebody else's money making sure that when she finally... He stopped. He stopped so hard the table shook. At 1:51 in the afternoon, 400 feet away, Dana Moreau said into a radio in a voice like glass, "Go." And Emma Carter looked down at a man who had just said the number out loud, and she said the only thing she had left. She said, "Mr. Hale, I'm sorry it was you." He did not run. That was the thing Emma would remember. 2 agents came up the sidewalk at 1:52 in the afternoon, and Vincent Hale did not stand, did not shout, did not reach for a phone. He sat with his hands flat on the table, and he looked at Emma the entire time, and when the first agent said his name, he said, "I know." And then he said one more thing to Emma, and it was 6 words. He said, "You were never the clean one." Emma said, "No, I was the one she loved." At 1:54, they took him. At 1:55, Emma Carter walked 11 steps to a van and got in and sat down and did not speak for 4 minutes. Dana Moreau did not touch her. Nobody said good job. Nobody said anything at all until Emma finally said, "Did you get it?" And Moreau said, $190 million of somebody else's money. "Is that enough?" "Emma," Moreau said, and her voice was not a prosecutor's voice. He said the number. Nobody knows that number. That number does not exist outside of 4 people and a spreadsheet in New Jersey. Emma, he said it out loud on a sidewalk to a woman he'd known for 50 minutes. Emma looked at her. "Why?" she said. And Dana Moreau said, "Because you let him talk about her." At 2:11, the wire came off, and Emma's hands started shaking so badly that Olivia Parker had to hold the coffee cup for her, and the shaking lasted 19 minutes. And when it was over, Emma Carter said, "Olivia, take me to see Tomas's father." "Emma." "Not for the case," Emma said. "For me." At 4 in the afternoon on February 20th, Emma sat in a room in Rye, New York, with an 81-year-old man who had run her grandmother's development office for 19 years, and he did not know her. He was polite. He was so polite. He said, "Are you a friend of my son's?" "Yes," Emma said. "He's a good boy." "He is." And then Tomas Reyes Sr. said, "Do I know you? You look like somebody." Emma took his hand. "Mr. Reyes," she said, "a long time ago you told somebody something nice about a girl at a party." He smiled, and it was empty, and it was kind. "I said a lot of things," he said. "I liked my job." "I know you did," Emma said. "It was the nicest thing anybody ever said about me, and I never got to hear it, and I came to say thank you." He patted her hand. "You're welcome," he said. "Who are you?" And Emma Carter said, "Nobody. I'm just a person." At 4:40, she walked out to the car, and Olivia said, "Are you all right?" "They never charged him," Emma said. "No. He never knew." "No, honey." "Olivia, he's the only innocent man in this entire thing," Emma said, "and he's the only one who doesn't get to know it." At 9 in the morning on March 4th, a federal grand jury returned a sealed indictment against Vincent Hale on 11 counts, and the 11 counts had nothing to do with a ring and nothing to do with a rooftop and nothing to do with Emma Carter's marriage. They had to do with a wire in 2015. At 9:40, Sophia Bennett's lawyer called Emma directly, which he was not supposed to do. "Mrs. Carter, she wants to see you." "No, she's not asking for anything." "Everyone's not asking for something," Emma said. "That's how it works." There was a pause. "Ma'am," Michael Ferraro said, "she's pleading. Tomorrow. Securities fraud, 18 months, and she's testifying and she's going to lose everything she has. And she asked me to tell you she's not asking for forgiveness. She's asking for 4 minutes." At 2 in the afternoon on March 5th, Emma Carter sat down across from Sophia Bennett for the second time in her life. Sophia looked 10 years older. 4 minutes, Emma said. "I only need one." "Then take one." Sophia Bennett put her hands on the table. "I lied to you in this diner," she said. "You asked when I learned your last name, and I said the party, and it was a reflex, and I've thought about it every day since. And Emma, here's the thing I need to say. I didn't lie to protect Vincent." She looked up. "I lied because I couldn't stand for you to know that I'd been in a room with you 8 years ago and not noticed you." Emma said nothing. "Table 19, Sophia said. "I sat 4 seats from you. I have no memory of you. None. I sat 4 seats from a person and I don't remember her face because I spent that entire dinner working the man on my left, and Emma, that's who I was. That's exactly who I was. Vincent Hale didn't corrupt me. He just found me already like that." She stood up. "That's it," she said. "That's the whole thing. I'm not sorry for you because sorry's useless, and you said so yourself. I read the transcript. I'm just telling you the true thing so somebody in this world knows it." At 2:06, Sophia Bennett got to the door, and Emma said, "Sophia." She turned. "The storage unit in Newark," Emma said. "Was that real?" Sophia Bennett's face came apart. "Yes," she said. "Then that's yours," Emma said. "Whatever they take, they can't take that. You built something before he found you. He didn't give you that. He just paid for it." Sophia stood in the doorway of a conference room and cried for the first time in 11 years. At 10 in the morning on April 11th, Daniel Brooks pled guilty to 2 counts and cooperated fully, and the government recommended 37 months, and the judge, a woman of 60, who had been doing this for a very long time, looked down at him for a while before she spoke. She said, "Mr. Brooks, do you want to say anything?" And Daniel Brooks, who had talked his way into every room he had ever been in, stood up in a federal courtroom and could not do it. He opened his mouth twice. Then he said, "I made her laugh." The room went quiet. "I'm sorry," the judge said. "Say that again." "The first night," Daniel said, "at the bar, I was supposed to walk over and be interesting. That was the whole job, and I walked over and I said something stupid and she laughed, and it was real. It was real, Your Honor. It was the only real thing I ever did in 8 years, and I didn't plan it, and I couldn't do it again, and I've been trying to explain to myself for 4 days what happened to me between that laugh and last February, and I can't. I can't do it. There's no sentence." He looked at the table. "I keep trying to find the day," he said. "The day I decided. There isn't one. That's what I want to say. There isn't a day." Emma Carter in the 3rd row did not move. At 10:40 they took him out, and he turned around at the door and looked for her, and she was there, and she let him see her, and that was all she gave him, and it was more than she had planned to. Claire said in the hallway, "Why did you come?" "Because he was 26 once," Emma said, "and somebody bought him a chair." At 8 in the morning on June 2nd, Marcus Webb lost his job. At 8:30 on June 2nd, Emma Carter called him. "Mr. Webb, I heard." "Ma'am, it's fine." "It's not fine. How long till your pension?" 4 months. "Mr. Webb," Emma said, "how would you feel about running security for a foundation?" There was a very long silence. "Ma'am," Marcus Webb said, "I don't want charity." "Marcus," Emma said, "I've got a building full of people who walk past the desk like it's furniture, and I want somebody standing at it who looks up." At 11 on September 19th, the trial of Vincent Hale began, and it lasted 6 weeks, and Emma Carter testified for 2 days. The defense went at her exactly the way Olivia said they would: wealthy, vengeful, humiliated on the internet, a woman who wanted somebody enormous to blame for a husband who simply cheated. And on the second day, the lead defense attorney, a very good man doing a very hard job, said, "Mrs. Carter, isn't it true that you agreed to record my client because you wanted revenge for your marriage?" And Emma said, "No." "Then why did you do it?" Emma looked at the jury. "Because he asked me to bring my grandmother's ring to lunch," she said, "and he said it was because he'd never seen it in person, and that was the only true sentence anybody said to me that entire month." The courtroom was silent. "Mrs. Carter, he spent his whole life outside the window," Emma said. "He's never been in a room, not one. He bought a table at my grandmother's benefit for $40,000, and he stayed home. He funded a company for 11 years and never let his name on a single document. He walked into a lobby at 5 in the morning on Saturdays for 8 months, because 5 in the morning is the only time a man like that can be somewhere." She looked at the defense table. "I didn't record him for revenge," Emma said. "I recorded him because I was the first person in 28 years who let him sit at a table and be seen, and he wanted it so badly, he told me everything." At 4:11 on November 8th, the jury came back guilty on 9 of 11 counts. Vincent Hale did not move. At 4:14, as they took him, he looked across a courtroom at Emma Carter, and he did not say anything, and she understood that he did not need to. He had finally been in the room. At 6 that evening, Dana Moreau found Emma on the courthouse steps. "You want to say something to the cameras?" "No." "Emma, there's about 40 of them." "I know. They're going to ask if you won." Emma looked at her. "Then I'll answer that one," she said. At 6:02 on November 8th, Emma Carter stood in front of 40 cameras, and a reporter shouted, "Emma, do you feel like you won?" And Emma said, "No." The steps went quiet. "Because nobody wins when trust is destroyed," she said. "Sophia Bennett built a real company, and it's gone. Peter Kim did the right thing, and he can't get hired. A man named Warren Deeds did 8 years in prison for something a rich man talked him into, and nobody believed him for 11 years, and nobody's giving those years back." She stopped. "But people rebuild," she said. "That's the only part I know is true. So no, I didn't win. I just stopped losing." At 9 that night in her apartment, Emma opened a box that had come back from an evidence locker 3 weeks earlier. The ring was in it. She looked at it for a long time, then she called Olivia. "Olivia, I want to give it away." "Emma, not sell, give." "To who?" "To Warren Deeds' daughter," Emma said. "She's 19. She wants to be a nurse. Olivia, she's never met a person who wasn't ashamed of her father." There was a long silence on the line. "Honey," Olivia Parker said, "Margaret gave you that ring." "Margaret gave me the fact that she saw it coming and trusted me anyway," Emma said. She wrote it down. She said, "Let them have the ring. It's a stone. It never made me brave." Olivia was crying. "Do it," she said. At 2 in the afternoon on December 9th, Emma Carter drove to Joliet, Illinois, and put a 51-year-old ring into the hands of a 19-year-old girl who had never in her life been given anything by anybody. And Warren Deeds stood in his own kitchen and put both hands over his face and could not speak for a full minute. And when he could, he said, "Ma'am, why?" And Emma said, "Because you called Dana back." At 4, driving east out of Illinois, Emma Carter cried for the first time since a hotel hallway in February, and it lasted an hour, and it was not grief. 2 years later, the Whitmore Foundation opened a program with no name on the door, and it did one thing. It paid for lawyers for people who were about to be somebody's exhibit. It found the Daniels, it found the Warrens, it found the people who had reached for the pen themselves and had never once in their lives been asked why they were starving. It was funded at 9 figures. The first person Emma Carter hired to run it was a man named Peter Kim, who cried in the interview and apologized for crying, and Emma said, "Peter, you're the only person in this story who did the right thing on the first try. Sit down." Emma met Ethan Walker at a hearing. He was a forensic accountant, and he had spent 9 months tracing Riverstone entities, and he had never once tried to be interesting. He said hard, true things in a flat voice. He never asked her a single question about her family. It took him a year to ask her to dinner. And at that dinner, he said, "I have to tell you something, and it's going to sound bad." "Okay." "I know everything about you," Ethan said. "I've read your bank records. I've read your grandmother's estate. I've read your text messages from February because they were exhibits. Emma, I know more about your life than anybody who's ever loved you, and I want to say out loud that I didn't earn any of it. It was just my job." Emma looked at him. "That's the strangest thing anyone's ever said to me," she said. "I know." "Why are you telling me?" Ethan Walker said, "Because everybody else found out about you on purpose. And that was the moment. Not a rooftop, not a ring, not roses. A man in a bad tie saying, 'I didn't study you, I just read the file and here it is, and I'm sorry.'" Emma laughed. It was real and it was hers and nobody had built it. She never remarried. That surprised people. She stayed with Ethan for 11 years and counting, and they never signed a thing. And once a reporter asked her why, and Emma said, "Because I finally understand what a signature is." The ring lived in Joliet on the hand of a nurse. The letter lived in a frame in Emma's office, and she read one line of it most weeks, and it was never the line people expected. It was not the line about the lock. It was, "You were loved badly by a man who studied you. There is no smarter Emma who avoids this. Stop looking for her." Emma stopped looking for her. That was the whole thing. That was what it cost and what it bought. She did not get her marriage back, and she did not want it. She did not get 8 years back. She did not get to be the woman who was never chosen at a table she didn't know she was sitting at. But on a rooftop in February, with 200 people watching and 50 phones up and a wall of roses behind a man on one knee, a machine that had been built over 28 years, funded with $2 billion and aimed at one specific woman's heart, needed her to scream. And she asked a question instead. That is why it came apart. Not the lawyers, not the footage, not the letter or the ledger or the wire from 2015. 4 words quietly in a blue dress, holding a cake. From whom? Love is not a man choosing you in front of a crowd. Love is what somebody does when nobody is filming and there is nothing left to get. Emma Carter learned that at the highest price anyone ever paid for it, and she never had to learn it twice. She kept her name, she kept her broken E, and every single thing she signed for the rest of her life, she signed herself.